Welcome back, Legends. This is HP Fiction. Here we explore powerful Harry Potter what-if stories. What if death sent Harry Potter back to the Founder's era at age 6? If you enjoy epic magical videos, subscribe to HP Fiction. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, Death's Final Gift. The cupboard under the stairs had always smelled of dust and old shoes, but tonight it smelled like something else. Something cold and ancient that made the air feel heavy in Harry's lungs. He lay on his thin mattress, knees drawn to his chest, listening to the familiar sounds of Uncle Vernon's snores through the floorboards above. The house at number 4 Privet Drive was silent except for that rhythmic rumble, but Harry couldn't sleep. He never could sleep on nights like this. Nights when the sky beyond the small grate of the cupboard door seemed too dark, too empty, as if the stars themselves had been swallowed by something vast and patient. Harry was 6 years old, though he sometimes forgot his own age. The Dursleys reminded him often enough, usually when they were explaining how he was too old for birthday parties, too old for toys, too old for anything that might make him feel like a real child. He had learned to make himself small, to move quietly, to exist in the spaces between their notice. It was survival, plain and simple. But tonight, something was different. He felt it first as a pressure in his chest, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the air becomes thick and waiting. The darkness in the cupboard seemed to deepen, to gather in the corners like liquid shadow. Harry sat up slowly, his heart beginning to beat faster. The small sliver of light from beneath the door flickered and died. "Hello." His voice came out as barely a whisper, scratching against the silence. No answer. But the pressure increased, and Harry felt his skin prickle with goosebumps. He reached for the door handle, intending to push it open and flee into the relative safety of the hallway, but his hand stopped mid-motion. There was someone in the cupboard with him. Harry couldn't see them, couldn't hear them breathe, but he knew. The certainty settled into his bones like the weight of a hand on his shoulder. He turned slowly, his small body trembling, and found himself staring into nothing, and yet not nothing. The darkness had taken shape. It was a figure, tall and cloaked, and it radiated a cold that had nothing to do with temperature. The figure spoke, and its voice was like autumn wine through dead leaves. Harry Potter. Harry couldn't scream. His throat had closed up, frozen by the sheer impossible presence of whatever this was. He pressed himself back against the wall, trying to disappear into it, but the figure didn't move toward him. It simply waited. "Who are you?" Harry managed, the words barely audible. "I am what comes at the end," the figure said. "I am the door that closes. I am the silence after the final breath. Men have called me many names. Your aunt calls me something else when she thinks no one is listening." Harry's mind struggled to process the words. He was 6. He knew about death in the vague way children do. It was what happened to old people, to characters in fairy tales, to the birds that sometimes fell from the sky in the garden. But this was different. This was death itself standing in his cupboard, and it was talking to him. "Why are you here?" Harry asked, and he was surprised by how steady his voice sounded. Perhaps some part of him had always known this moment would come. Perhaps the lingering shadows in his dreams had been preparing him. "I am here to show you something," Death replied. "To show you what should have been. Your parents died for you, Harry Potter. They stood against impossible odds and gave everything so that you might live. But the life they gave you, it is not what they would have wanted." The shadows in the cupboard shifted, and suddenly Harry could see things that weren't there. Images formed in the darkness like photographs developing in chemical baths. He saw a woman with red hair and green eyes, his mother. She was laughing, her face bright with joy, and beside her stood a man with messy black hair and wire-rimmed glasses, his father. They were young, so young, and they were looking at a baby wrapped in a blanket. "You," Death said, and Harry understood that he was seeing the past. The images changed. He saw his mother screaming, saw a flash of green light, saw his father fall. And then there was the baby, crying, and a man with a snake-like face looming over him. But the light didn't touch the child. It rebounded, and the man with the snake face was gone. "The price of survival," Death intoned. But the cost was never meant to be yours to pay. The prophecy that marked you was always a choice, not a certainty. And choices can be unmade. Harry felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't understand everything he was seeing, but he understood enough. His parents were dead because of him. Because of what he was, what he would become. I don't want to be the one who gets people killed, he whispered. You are a child, Death said, and its voice held something almost like gentleness. No child should bear such weight. But you were never meant to be ordinary, Harry Potter. The magic in your blood is ancient and deep, and it has been waiting for someone who could carry it forward. The question is, will you? What do you mean? Harry wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to be brave. This was Death. He should be scared. He was scared. But there was something else too, a curiosity, a hunger for answers that had been denied him his entire life. The future is not set, Death said. Time is a river, but rivers can be diverted. Small changes in the past ripple forward to create vast differences in the present. I have watched you, Harry Potter. I have watched the path that lies before you, a path of suffering and loss, of battles fought too. Young, of a destiny that was never yours to accept. But I am offering you another way. How? The word escaped Harry before he could stop it. How could I change anything? I'm just Harry. I'm nobody. You are the child of the prophecy, Death said. The one marked as an equal to the Dark Lord who hunts you. But before that prophecy was spoken, before Voldemort rose to power, there were others. For others who shaped the world you live in. They built a school that would become a sanctuary. They forged magic that would endure for centuries. They were the founders of Hogwarts, and their knowledge has been lost to time. Harry blinked. He knew about Hogwarts, had heard Aunt Petunia whisper the word like a curse, had seen the letter addressed to him that Uncle Vernon had burned in the fireplace. But he had never imagined that the school had founders, that there were people who had built it from nothing. The founders' magic was different from what the world knows now, Death continued. They understood the deep currents of power, the ancient arts that modern wizards have forgotten. They could shape reality with a word, heal with a touch, and protect with a thought. And they are waiting for you, Harry Potter. They are waiting for the child who will carry their legacy forward. Waiting? Harry's brow furrowed. But they're dead. They lived 1,000 years ago. Aunt Petunia said that. Aunt Petunia knows nothing, Death interrupted, and there was a sharpness to its voice now. Time is not as fixed as mortals believe. I have the power to send you back, to place you in the arms of the founders themselves. They will raise you. They will teach you. And when you return to your own time, you will have the knowledge to change everything. Harry sat in stunned silence. The words tumbled through his mind like stones in a river, each one carrying weight and meaning he could barely grasp. Go back in time. Live with the founders of Hogwarts. Learn magic that no one else knew. Why? He asked finally. Why would you do this for me? The shadows seemed to sigh, and for a moment the cold in the cupboard became less intense. Because death is not your enemy, Harry Potter. I am not your enemy. The Dark Lord who hunts you has tried to cheat me for years, has committed atrocities in his fear of me. But you have always been different. You have faced me without flinching, even as an infant. There is something in you that belongs to the old ways, to the time when death was understood as a natural part of life rather than something to be feared. You can restore that understanding. You can heal the broken world. Harry thought about it. He thought about the Dursleys, about the cupboard, about all the years of being small and invisible and unwanted. He thought about his parents, about the images he had just seen of their sacrifice. He thought about the Dark Lord who had killed them, who was apparently still out there waiting for him. Do I have to come back? He asked quietly. Can't I just stay there? With the founders? Time will pull you back, Death said. You cannot change the fact of your birth or your destiny. But you can change the shape of that destiny. You can grow stronger, wiser, more prepared. The founder's magic will be your armor against what is to come. Harry nodded slowly. It wasn't a perfect solution, nothing in his life had ever been perfect. But it was a chance. It was the first real chance he had ever been given. "What do I have to do?" he asked. "Nothing," Death said. "Close your eyes." Harry hesitated only for a moment. Then he closed his eyes and felt the cold wash over him like a wave of liquid ice. The darkness behind his eyelids deepened until it was absolute, and he felt himself falling, tumbling through emptiness that had no beginning and no end. He couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't feel anything except the sensation of motion, of being pulled through time and space by forces far beyond his understanding. And then, suddenly, there was light. The first thing Harry noticed was the warmth. It enveloped him like a blanket, sinking into his skin and chasing away the cold that had permeated his bones for as long as he could remember. He blinked his eyes open, squinting against a brightness that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sky above him was a brilliant shade of blue, dotted with clouds that moved lazily across the heavens. He was lying on something soft, grass, he realized, green and fragrant and alive beneath him. He sat up slowly, looking around at a landscape that seemed to belong to a storybook. Rolling hills stretched in every direction, covered in wildflowers of every color imaginable. A forest loomed in the distance, its trees ancient and massive, their leaves whispering in a gentle breeze. And there, rising from the heart of the valley, was a castle. Harry stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. The castle was like nothing he had ever seen. Its towers soared toward the sky, each one topped with a flag that snapped proudly in the wind. The stone of its walls was warm and golden in the sunlight, and windows glittered like scattered diamonds across its surface. It was magnificent and terrifying and impossibly beautiful, and Harry couldn't look away from it. "Where am I?" he whispered to no one in particular. "Glenfinnan Valley," said a voice behind him. Harry spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. A woman stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, with hair the color of autumn leaves and a face that seemed to radiate warmth. Her robes were simple but richly colored, dyed in deep greens and golds, and her eyes were the kindest Harry had ever seen. "Who are you?" Harry asked, instinctively stepping backward. "I am Helga," the woman said, and her smile was like a ray of sunshine. "Helga Hufflepuff. And you must be the child we have been waiting for." Harry didn't understand. He looked down at himself. At his too small clothes and his too thin arms, and he felt suddenly self-conscious. "I'm Harry," he said. "Harry Potter." "Welcome, Harry Potter," Helga said, and she knelt down so that her eyes were level with his. "You have traveled far, haven't you? Across time and space, to a place that has been waiting for you for 1,000 years. "I don't understand," Harry said, and he felt tears pricking at his eyes again. "Death sent me here. It said I had to learn magic. That I had to learn from the founders." "Death has many names and many faces," Helga said gently. "But its purpose is always the same, to guide souls to where they need to be. You are where you need to be, Harry. And we are so very glad to have you." She extended her hand, and Harry stared at it for a moment. It was the first time anyone had ever offered him a hand without wanting something in return. The Dursleys never touched him unless they were pushing him aside or grabbing him to punish him. The teachers at school only reached for him when he had done something wrong. He took Helga's hand. Her grip was warm and firm, and when she helped him to his feet, Harry felt something shift in his chest. It was as if a weight he had been carrying his entire life had suddenly become lighter. He still had questions, still had fears, but the loneliness that had been his constant companion for as long as he could remember had begun to fade. "Come," Helga said, leading him toward the castle. "The others are waiting. They have been anxious to meet you." They walked through the valley, past fields of wildflowers and streams so clear Harry could see fish swimming in them. The castle grew larger as they approached, its towers casting long shadows across the ground, and Harry felt his heart beat faster with each step. This was Hogwarts, or rather, Hogwarts as it had been before it was even built. He was walking toward the future, and he was only 6 years old. "What are the other founders like?" he asked, trying to keep the nervousness out of his voice. "Godric is brave and noble," Helga said. He will teach you about the magic of the heart, the courage that comes not from being unafraid, but from acting despite the fear. Salazar is clever and cautious. He has strong opinions and a sharper tongue, but his loyalty to those he loves is absolute. And Rowena? She smiled, something wistful crossing her face. Rowena is the wisest of us. Her mind is like a library that contains all the knowledge in the world. She will teach you to think, to question, to seek understanding. Harry nodded, trying to absorb everything. It was overwhelming, this sudden flood of information and kindness. Part of him was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to reveal that this was all a trick, that he would be punished for daring to hope. But nothing happened. Helga simply led him up the steps to the castle's massive doors, and when they swung open, Harry stepped into a world that would change his life forever. The interior of the castle was even more breathtaking than its exterior. Torches flickered along the walls, casting dancing shadows across stone that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The floor was made of smooth flagstones, worn by 1,000 years of feet that had not yet walked on them. And in the center of the great hall, 3 figures waited. The first was a man with red gold hair and a beard that seemed to glow in the torchlight. He was tall and broad, with shoulders that could have carried the weight of the world, and his eyes were the color of summer skies. When he saw Harry, his face broke into a grin that was pure warmth. "So this is the child death has sent us," he said, striding forward. His voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. "I am Godric Gryffindor. And you, little one, are a sight for sore eyes." Before Harry could react, Godric had swept him into a crushing embrace. Harry froze, his body stiff with shock. No one had hugged him before, not once, not ever. But Godric's arms were strong and warm, and something inside Harry gave way, and he found himself clinging to the man's robes, trying very hard not to cry. "There now," Godric said, his voice softer than before. "You're safe, little one. You're safe with us." The second figure approached more slowly. She was tall and slender, with dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and a face that seemed carved from marble. Her robes were silver and blue, and when she looked at Harry, her eyes seemed to see straight through him. "Rowena Ravenclaw," she said, and her voice was like a silver bell. "You have great potential, Harry Potter. I can feel it radiating from you like heat from a fire. The question is, will you learn to control it, or will it control you?" Harry swallowed hard. "I want to learn," he said. "I want to understand." Rowena's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Good," she said. "That is the first step toward wisdom." The third figure had not moved from his position near the back of the hall. He was tall and dark, with black hair that fell across his face and eyes that seemed to hold shadows within them. His robes were green and silver, and when he looked at Harry, there was something cautious in his gaze. "Salazar Slytherin," Helga said gently, guiding Harry forward. "Salazar, this is Harry." Salazar studied Harry for a long moment, his dark eyes flickering with an unreadable emotion. Then he stepped forward and knelt down, bringing his face level with Harry's. "So," he said, and his voice was lower than the others, like the whisper of wind through a forest. "Death has sent us a child. A child marked with a prophecy and a burden that would break most men. Tell me, Harry Potter, what do you want most in the world?" Harry thought about it. He thought about the Dursleys, about his parents, about the Dark Lord who was waiting for him. But the answer that came to his lips was simpler than all of that. "I want to belong somewhere," he said. "I want to be wanted." Something flickered in Salazar's eyes, a spark of recognition, perhaps, or of kinship. "Then you have come to the right place," he said. "We will make you one of us, Harry Potter. We will teach you the magic of the Founders, the ancient arts that have been lost to time. And when the time comes for you to return, you will be ready." He extended his hand, and Harry took it without hesitation. It was colder than Helga's, harder than Godric's, but there was strength in it. And when Salazar's fingers closed around his, Harry felt something settle into place, a connection, a promise, a beginning. The days that followed were unlike anything Harry had ever experienced. He was given a room of his own, a small chamber in one of the castle's towers, with a window that overlooked the valley. There was a bed with soft blankets and a pillow that smelled of lavender, and a wardrobe full of clothes that actually fit him. For the first time in his life, Harry had something that was truly his. Mealtimes were overwhelming. The founders ate together in a small chamber off the Great Hall, and Harry was invited to join them. The food was wonderful: warm bread and fresh butter, roasted meat and vegetables, pies and cakes that made his mouth water. But more than the food, Harry was stunned by the conversation. The founders talked to him, asked him questions, listened to his answers. They seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. "Tell us about your world," Helga asked one evening, passing him a slice of honey cake. "What is life like in the future?" Harry hesitated, not sure how to answer. "It's different," he said. "There aren't as many castles. And there are machines, things that do work for you. But the magic." He trailed off, thinking about the Dursleys' hatred of all things magical. "I don't know much about the magic," he admitted. "I didn't know I was a wizard until a few years ago. And then I was told I was a freak and I shouldn't talk about it." A terrible silence fell over the table. The founders exchanged glances that Harry couldn't interpret, and he felt his face grow hot. He had said something wrong. He was always saying something wrong. "Who told you such a thing?" Godric asked, and there was a dangerous edge to his voice. "My aunt and uncle," Harry said quietly. "They took me in after my parents died. They don't like magic. They don't like me." "Then they are fools," Salazar said flatly. "You are a child of magic, Harry. You carry the blood of the ancient lines. They should be honored to have you." Harry stared at his plate, not sure what to say. The anger in Salazar's voice was shocking, not because it was directed at him, but because it was directed for him. No one had ever been angry on his behalf before. "I know I'm not meant to be magical," he said. "I know I'm just a freak who—" "Stop." Rowena's voice cut through his words like a blade. "You are not a freak. You are a child who has been told lies by ignorant people. And we are going to teach you the truth." She rose from her seat and came to stand beside Harry, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Magic is not something to be feared, Harry. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is a gift, a connection to the very fabric of existence. You are not a freak. You are a miracle." Harry felt the tears spilling over, and he couldn't stop them. He was crying in front of the four most powerful wizards in history, and he couldn't make himself stop. "I don't understand," he sobbed. "Why are you being so nice to me? No one is ever nice to me. No one ever wants me." Helga moved around the table and knelt beside him, her warm eyes filling with sympathy. "Oh, my dear boy," she said softly. "We want you because you deserve to be wanted. Every child deserves love, safety, and belonging. It is the most basic of rights." "But I don't," Harry started to say, but Helga shook her head. "You don't have to do anything to earn it," she said. "You don't have to prove yourself or deserve it. It is yours simply because you exist. And we will never let you forget that." The first lesson came the next morning. Godric found Harry in the castle's library, staring at a book he couldn't read. The script was too old, too ornate, and the letters seemed to move on the page. The red-haired founder was grinning, and there was an energy about him that made Harry want to smile back. "Ready for your first lesson, little one?" Godric asked, his voice warm and inviting. Harry nodded eagerly, setting the book aside. "What are we learning?" "Something more important than any spell or incantation," Godric said. "We're learning about the nature of magic itself. What it is, where it comes from, why it flows through some people and not others." He led Harry to a small courtyard behind the castle, where the morning sun was just beginning to warm the stones. A small fountain stood in the center, and Godric gestured for Harry to sit on its edge. "Close your eyes," Godric instructed. "Feel the sun on your skin. Hear the water in the fountain. Smell the flowers in the garden. And then reach inside yourself, find that place where the magic lives." Harry closed his eyes, trying to do as Godric had said. The sun was warm on his face, and the sound of the water was soothing. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of roses and something else, something he couldn't name. But when he tried to reach inside himself, he found only emptiness. "I can't feel anything," he said, opening his eyes. "There's nothing there." Godric knelt beside him, his expression patient and kind. "You're trying too hard," he said. "Magic isn't something you reach for, it's something you let go of. Think of it like breathing. You don't force the air into your lungs, you simply allow it to come." Harry tried again, this time focusing on relaxing instead of searching. He let his breathing slow, let his shoulders drop, let the tension in his body flow away like the water in the fountain. And then, suddenly, he felt it. It was like a warmth spreading through his chest, starting from a small point and expanding outward. It filled his limbs, his fingers and toes, and he could feel it humming through every cell of his body. "I feel it," he whispered. "I feel it." Godric smiled, and there was pride in his eyes. "Good," he said. "Now hold on to that feeling. Don't try to control it, just let it be. Let it be part of you." Harry nodded, his eyes still closed, savoring the sensation. It was like coming home to a place he had never been, like finding something he had lost but hadn't known was missing. "The magic is always there," Godric said softly. "Even when you can't feel it. Even when you doubt it. It's a part of you, woven into your very existence. And the more you learn to live with it, the more it will reveal itself to you." The weeks turned into months, and Harry's education began in earnest. Rowena took charge of his intellectual studies, teaching him to read and write in Old English, to understand the foundations of magical theory, and to think critically about everything. Her lessons were demanding but never harsh, and Harry found himself hungry for the knowledge she offered. "Magic is not about force," Rowena said one afternoon, as they studied the properties of different magical cores. "It is about understanding. A spell is simply a command given to the universe, but the universe will only listen if you speak in a language it understands. You must know not just the words, but the meaning behind them." She handed him a small stone and asked him to levitate it. Harry focused, drawing on the feeling of magic he had discovered in the courtyard. The stone trembled, then rose slowly into the air. "Good," Rowena said. "Now, tell me, why did it work?" Harry thought about it. "Because I believed it would," he said. "Because I understood it was possible." Rowena nodded. "That is part of it. But there is more. You understood not just that the stone could float, but that it wanted to float. All things have their own nature, their own desires. Magic is the art of convincing them to act differently." Harry looked at the stone, still hovering in the air, and he tried to feel its nature. It was cold and hard, made of earth and time. It wanted to rest, to be still. But he was asking it to be something else, and it was responding because he had asked with respect. "That's beautiful," he said softly. "I never thought of magic like that." "Most don't," Rowena said. "They see magic as a tool, a weapon, a means to an end. But it is so much more than that. Magic is the language of creation itself. And if you learn to speak it fluently, there is nothing you cannot do." Salazar's lessons were different. He took Harry to the dungeons beneath the castle, where the air was cool and the walls were lined with ancient runes. There, he taught Harry about the darker aspects of magic, not dark in the sense of evil, but in the sense of the hidden, the secret, the power that lay beneath the surface. "Magic is like a river," Salazar said, his voice low and serious. "The surface is what most wizards see, the sparkling water, the gentle currents. But beneath the surface, there are depths that have never been explored. Depths that hold secrets too dangerous for the unprepared." He placed his hand on a wall of runes, and they began to glow with a soft green light. "These are the old protections," he said. "The wards that keep this castle safe from those who would harm it. They are strong, but they are not unbreakable. And someday, Harry, you will need to know how to break them." "Why?" Harry asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because you will face enemies who know the old magic," Salazar said. "Enemies who will not be stopped by simple spells or ordinary wards. If you are to survive, you must know the secrets they know. You must be willing to go where others fear to tread. Harry shivered, but he didn't look away. Teach me, he said. I want to know everything. Salazar studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I will teach you, he said. But you must promise me something. You will only use this knowledge for protection, never for destruction. The old magic is dangerous, Harry. It can corrupt as easily as it can empower. You must have a strong heart and a clear mind to wield it. I promise, Harry said solemnly. Salazar's expression softened, just a little. Then let us begin. Helga's lessons were the ones Harry looked forward to most. She taught him about the magic of plants, of healing, of nurturing life in all its forms. She took him to the greenhouses, where she grew herbs and flowers that could cure illness or poison with equal ease. You must have a kind heart to work with living things, Helga said, as she showed Harry how to transplant a delicate seedling. Plants can feel, Harry. They respond to the energy you give them. If you come to them with anger or fear, they will wilt. But if you come with love and patience, they will flourish. Harry handled the seedling with gentle hands, feeling its tiny roots and the life pulsing within it. He could sense its need for water, for sunlight, for the warmth of the earth. He gave it what it needed, and he felt the plant's gratitude ripple back to him. It's like we're connected, he said. Like we're part of the same thing. Helga smiled. We are, Harry. Everything is connected, the plants, the animals, the earth, the sky, the people. Magic is simply the awareness of that connection. When you heal someone, you're not just mending their body, you're mending the bonds between them and the world. Harry looked at his hands, imagining the magic flowing through them like a river. He thought of the Dursleys, who had never seen him as anything more than a burden, and he wondered if they knew about connections. If they knew that everything they did affected everything else. Probably not, he decided. They were too focused on being normal to notice anything extraordinary. And then there were the lessons with Godric. These were the most practical, the most visceral. Godric taught Harry to fight, not just with magic, but with his body and his mind. He taught him the value of courage, of standing firm in the face of fear, of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Fear is natural, Godric said, as Harry faced him across the training yard with a wooden practice sword. But fear is not weakness. Fear is your body's way of telling you something is important. The trick is not to banish fear, but to act despite it. Harry gripped the practice sword, his palms sweaty. Godric was huge, and his presence was intimidating, but Harry had learned to trust him. He knew that Godric would never hurt him intentionally. Come at me, Godric said. Show me what you've learned. Harry lunged forward, swinging the practice sword in a clumsy arc. Godric sidestepped easily, and Harry stumbled past him, nearly falling. Again, Godric said. But this time, think about what you're doing. Don't just swing wildly, aim. Intend. Know where you want the blade to go. Harry tried again, focusing on Godric's chest, aiming for the center. This time, his swing was cleaner, more controlled. Godric blocked it with his own sword, and Harry felt the impact travel up his arm. Better, Godric said. But you're still hesitating. You're afraid of hurting me. Because I don't want to, Harry said, panting. I don't want to hurt anyone. Good, Godric said, a hint of approval in his voice. That's a noble instinct. But there will be times when you have no choice. Times when you must protect yourself and those you love. In those moments, hesitation can be deadly. He stepped forward, and his sword came toward Harry's head in a sudden, swift arc. Harry threw himself to the side, barely avoiding the blow, and scrambled to his feet. Good, Godric said again. Your instincts are sharp. Now use them. Don't think, just react. They sparred for hours, and by the end, Harry was exhausted but exhilarated. He had landed a few hits on Godric, had managed to dodge most of the blows aimed at him. He was far from being a skilled fighter, but he had begun to understand what it meant to fight with courage. You did well today, Godric said, offering Harry a hand to help him up. You're learning. And more importantly, you're growing. Harry took the hand, feeling the calloused grip of a warrior. Will I ever be as strong as you? He asked. Godric laughed, a deep, booming sound. Maybe not as strong, he said. But that's not the point. The point is to be strong enough to face whatever comes. And I believe you will be, Harry. I believe you will be magnificent. The months turned into years, and Harry grew. He grew taller, stronger, more confident. He learned to read and write in languages long forgotten, to cast spells that had never been recorded in modern texts, to understand magic on a level that few wizards would ever achieve. He learned to heal and to fight, to think and to feel, to navigate the complex politics of the magical world and the simple truths of the heart. And through it all, the Founders became his family. Godric was like a father, always ready with a laugh and a word of encouragement. He pushed Harry to be brave, to stand up for what was right, to never back down from a challenge. Salazar was like an uncle, stern and demanding but fiercely protective. He taught Harry the importance of careful thought, of planning ahead, of never revealing more than necessary. Rowena was like a wise grandmother, patient and brilliant, always ready with a new book to read or a new puzzle to solve. She taught Harry to love learning, to seek knowledge for its own sake, to never stop asking questions. And Helga was like a mother, warm and nurturing, always ready with a hug or a kind word. She taught Harry the magic of connection, of caring for others, of finding joy in the simplest things. For the first time in his life, Harry was happy. But even happiness, he learned, came with shadows. It began with small things. A sense of unease that Harry couldn't quite place. A feeling of being watched when he was alone in the castle's corridors. The occasional nightmare, filled with images of a green flash of light and a woman's scream. Harry tried to ignore them. He was happy, truly, deeply happy for the first time in his life. He didn't want to let anything spoil that. But the dreams grew worse. One night, Harry dreamed of a Dark Lord sitting on a throne of bones, his face twisted with hatred. The Dark Lord was talking to someone, plotting something, and Harry could hear every word. The child must be destroyed, the Dark Lord hissed. The prophecy speaks of his power, his connection to the ancient magic. If he survives, he will be my undoing. Harry woke in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake off the fear that clung to him like a second skin. What was that? He whispered to the darkness. But the darkness didn't answer. The next morning, Harry went to Salazar. The dark-haired founder was in his study, poring over ancient texts, and he looked up when Harry entered. His sharp eyes took in Harry's pale face, the shadows beneath his eyes, and his expression softened. "What is it, Harry?" he asked. Harry told him about the dream. About the Dark Lord, the throne of bones, the words of hatred and destruction. Salazar listened without interrupting, his face growing more grim with each word. When Harry finished, he let out a heavy sigh. "Voldemort," he said. "He's a dark wizard who will rise to power in your time. I have sensed him in my visions, a user of dark magic more powerful than any in recent memory. He fears you, Harry. Because he knows what you can become." Harry shivered. "But I'm just a child. How could I possibly hurt him?" "Not now," Salazar said. "But in the future, when you return, you will be different. You will be prepared. And he knows it." "But I don't want to be his enemy," Harry said. "I don't want to fight anyone. I just want to live in peace." Salazar's expression was kind, but there was steel in his voice. "Sometimes, Harry, peace is not something we can choose. Sometimes, peace is something we must fight for. And you are destined to fight for it." Harry swallowed hard, the weight of destiny settling on his young shoulders. "What if I'm not strong enough?" he asked. "What if I fail?" Salazar reached out and placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "You will not fail," he said. "Because you will not face this alone. You have 4 of the most powerful wizards in history standing beside you. And more than that, you have a good heart, a strong mind, and the courage to do what is right. That is more than enough. Harry wanted to believe him. He wanted to feel brave, to feel confident. But underneath the hope, the fear remained, a quiet whisper in the back of his mind. The Dark Lord was waiting for him. And someday, Harry would have to face him. But that was a future battle. For now, Harry was still a child, and there was much work to be done. The Founders continued to teach him, to shape him, to prepare him for the destiny that awaited. And Harry continued to learn, to grow, to become the wizard he was meant to be. And through it all, he began to understand the prophecy that had sent him here. Death had not sent him to the past simply to learn magic. Death had sent him to change the future, to disrupt the patterns that led to suffering and loss, to build bridges between the old world and the new. The Founders' magic was not just powerful, it was transformative. It had the power to heal what had been broken, to restore what had been lost, to create a world where the darkness of Voldemort could not take root. But magic alone would not be enough. Harry would need more than spells and runes to succeed. He would need wisdom, courage, and the love of those who believed in him. He would need to become the person the Founders knew he could be. As Harry stood in the courtyard of Hogwarts, feeling the sun on his face and the magic humming through his veins, he made a silent promise to himself. He would not let the Founders down. He would not let his parents down. He would face the future, whatever it brought, and he would fight for a better world. And in that moment, he understood something profound. The cupboard under the stairs was far behind him now. He had been given a second chance, a chance to build something new, to become someone powerful. And he would not waste it. Not ever. The years continued to pass, and Harry grew older. He was 11 now, the age when most wizards began their formal education, but his education had already far surpassed anything Hogwarts could teach him. The Founders had given him knowledge that had been lost for centuries. He could speak Parseltongue, could communicate with creatures that most wizards believed were simply beasts, could shape magic with a thought and a word. He had been trained in the art of warding, alchemy, and rune magic, in the secrets of the old families and the deep mysteries of the ancient world. But more than magic, the Founders had given him something else, something even more precious. They had given him a sense of belonging, a knowledge that he was loved and valued for who he was. They had shown him that he was not a freak, not a burden, but a child of magic and hope and possibility. And now, as Harry stood in the great hall of the castle, surrounded by the 4 Founders, he knew that his time here was drawing to a close. "The moment is coming," Godric said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Death has spoken to me in my dreams. Soon, you will return to your own time. The past needs you, but the future needs you more." Harry felt tears pricking at his eyes. "I don't want to go," he said. "This is my home. You are my family." "The family you have here will always be with you," Helga said, pulling him into a warm embrace. "We will never truly leave you, Harry. Our love, our teachings, our magic, they are a part of you now. Carry them with you, and you will never be alone." Rowena approached, placing a small pendant around Harry's neck. It was a silver disc, etched with runes that shimmered in the torchlight. "This is a memory stone," she said. "I have imbued it with knowledge, everything we have taught you, everything you need to know. When you return, it will help you remember what you have learned." Salazar was the last to speak. He knelt before Harry, his dark eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You are one of us, Harry," he said. "I have never known a student with greater potential. Never forget who you are, what you stand for, and what you have been trained to become." He extended a hand, and Harry took it without hesitation. This time, the grip was not cold, but warm and firm, full of trust and affection. "I won't forget," Harry said. "I will never forget any of you." Salazar nodded, then rose to his feet. "Then go," he said. "Embrace your destiny, Harry Potter. And know that we will be watching." The farewells were bittersweet, filled with hugs and tears and promises that they would meet again. But death's call was growing stronger, pulling at Harry's very soul, and he knew he could not delay any longer. He stood in the courtyard, surrounded by the Founders and the gentle whisper of the valley wind. The sky was beginning to darken, the stars emerging one by one like scattered diamonds. "Thank you," Harry said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." And then the darkness took him. He fell through the void once more, but this time he was not afraid. He was filled with purpose, with knowledge, with the love of the 4 founders who had raised him. He knew what he had to do, and he had the tools to do it. The future was waiting. And Harry Potter was ready to face it. Chapter 2, The Child of the Founders. The darkness around Harry was not empty. It pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat, deep and slow and ancient. He floated in it, suspended between moments, and he could feel the years he had lived pressing against him like water against a dam. The memory stone around his neck was warm against his chest, a constant reminder of everything he had learned. But something was wrong. The pull that had brought him here was weakening, fraying at the edges like a rope about to snap. Harry felt himself drifting, losing direction, and panic began to rise in his chest. Where was he going? Would he ever find his way back? Not yet, Death's voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. The path is not ready. You must wait. Wait for what? Harry wanted to ask, but the words wouldn't come. He was suspended in the void, caught between the life he had lived and the life he was meant to return to. He could see flashes of images in the darkness, a castle burning, a woman screaming, a child with eyes like emeralds. And then the images cleared, and Harry saw them. The founders were standing in a circle in the great hall of Hogwarts, their faces illuminated by the glow of 4 massive candles. They were chanting, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the castle. Harry could see them as clearly as if he were standing beside them, and he realized with a jolt that they were casting a spell. A spell meant for him. He is lost in the void, Rowena's voice echoed through the darkness. We must anchor him to this time, to our time. If we do not, he will be scattered across the centuries. But the magic required. Helga's voice was strained with worry. It would mean binding him to us. Permanently. If we do this, Harry will never be able to fully sever his connection to the founders. Then he will have to bear that burden, Salazar said, his voice cold but resolute. Better to be bound to us than to be lost forever. Godric stepped forward, his sword drawn and held before him like an offering. I will give of my courage, he said. The magic of the lion heart, the strength to face any darkness without flinching. Let it be woven into his soul. Rowena placed a hand on her forehead, and a strand of silver light emerged from her temple. I will give of my wisdom, she said. The knowledge of ages, the clarity of mind, the understanding of the mysteries. Let it be woven into his thoughts. Helga pressed both hands to her chest, and a golden glow radiated from her heart. I will give of my compassion, she said. The love of all living things, the gentleness of the earth, the patience of the seasons. Let it be woven into his spirit. Salazar extended his hand, and shadows coiled around his fingers like living smoke. I will give of my cunning, he said. The ability to see through lies, to navigate treacherous paths, to protect what is sacred. Let it be woven into his instincts. The 4 strands of magic rose into the air, intertwining like threads in a tapestry. They spun together, faster and faster, until they formed a single cord of brilliant light. Then, with a sound like a bell tolling, the cord shot forward into the void and wrapped around Harry's chest. He felt it settle into him, deep into his bones, into his blood, into the very fabric of his being. He gasped as the magic flooded through him, a torrent of warmth and power that seemed to reshape him from the inside out. He could feel Godric's courage filling him, Rowena's wisdom sharpening his mind, Helga's compassion softening his heart, Salazar's cunning strengthening his resolve. And then he saw them again, the founders, their faces etched with exhaustion but their eyes bright with triumph. They had done it. They had saved him. But at what cost? The world reformed around Harry in fragments. First came the sound, the soft whisper of wind through leaves, the distant cry of birds, the gentle trickle of water somewhere nearby. Then came the light, warm and golden, filtering through the canopy of a massive tree. And finally came the sensations, the grass beneath his back, the sun on his face, the weight of the memory stone against his chest. Harry opened his eyes. He was lying in a meadow, surrounded by wildflowers and ancient oaks. The sky above him was a vivid blue, dotted with clouds that drifted lazily across the heavens. It was beautiful, peaceful, and utterly unfamiliar. Where was he? He sat up slowly, his head spinning. The magic of the Founder's ritual still hummed through him, but it was settling now, becoming a part of him rather than an overwhelming force. He could feel it in his fingertips, in the rhythm of his heartbeat, in the breath that filled his lungs. And then he saw them. The Founders were standing at the edge of the meadow, watching him with expressions of relief and joy. But they were different now, older, more weathered, their robes dusty and their faces lined with the passage of time. Harry realized with a shock that years had passed in the Founder's world while he had been lost in the void. "Harry," Helga breathed, and she was running toward him, her arms outstretched. "Oh, thank the gods. You're back. You're safe." Harry scrambled to his feet just in time to be enveloped in her embrace. He clung to her, burying his face in her robes, and he could feel the tears streaming down his cheeks. He didn't know how long he had been gone, but he knew it had been too long. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I was gone so long." "Don't you dare apologize," Helga said, her voice fierce with love. "You came back. That's all that matters." The other Founders had gathered around them, and Harry felt their hands on his shoulders, his back, his head. They were touching him as if to reassure themselves that he was real, that he was truly there. "How long was I gone?" Harry asked, pulling back to look at them. 3 years, Godric said, and there was a shadow in his eyes. "We feared you might never return. But we held on. We refused to give up hope." 3 years. Harry had been lost in the void for 3 years. He had missed so much, the seasons changing, the castle growing, the lives of the Founders continuing without him. He could see it in their faces, in the gray that had crept into their hair and the lines that had deepened around their eyes. "I'm so sorry," he said again. "I didn't mean to leave. I didn't choose to." "We know," Rowena said, her voice gentle. "The magic of the prophecy is unpredictable. It takes its own path, follows its own rules. You were never meant to control it, Harry. Only to survive it." Harry nodded, but the guilt still gnawed at him. He had been given so much, the Founders' love, their teachings, their magic, and he had repaid them by disappearing. By making them worry. But as he looked at their faces, he realized something. They weren't angry. They weren't disappointed. They were simply relieved that he was back. "Come," Salazar said, his voice gruff but warm. "We have much to discuss. And you, I suspect, need food." Harry's stomach rumbled in agreement, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he laughed. The great hall of Hogwarts had changed in the 3 years Harry had been gone. The walls were now adorned with tapestries and banners, each one representing a different house or family. The massive table in the center of the room had been polished to a gleaming shine, and new candles flickered in the chandeliers above. But what struck Harry most was the presence of others. Students, hundreds of them, filled the hall, their robes a riot of color and their voices a constant murmur of excitement. They were eating, talking, laughing, and Harry realized with a start that this was what Hogwarts was meant to be. A school. A sanctuary. A place of learning and growth. Your absence was not the only thing that changed, Rowena said, noticing his surprise. "In the years you were gone, the school grew. We opened our doors to all who wished to learn. The castle is now a home to hundreds of young witches and wizards." Harry watched the students, his heart swelling with a strange emotion. This was the legacy of the Founders, this beautiful, vibrant community of magic and learning. And he was part of it, in ways that went deeper than any of these students could understand. "The ritual we performed," Helga said, guiding Harry to a small table at the edge of the hall. "It bound you to us in ways that cannot be undone. You carry a piece of each of us, Harry. Our magic, our essence, our very souls. That is why the void could not hold you, it tried to scatter you across time, but we pulled you back. Harry touched the memory stone around his neck, feeling its warmth. "I can feel it," he said. "I can feel all of you, inside me. It's like I'm never alone." "That was the intent," Salazar said, his voice soft. "You will never be alone, Harry. Not truly. Whatever path you walk, whatever challenges you face, we will be with you." The students were looking at him now, curious and whispering. Harry felt their gazes like a physical weight, and he instinctively drew closer to the founders. "It's all right," Helga said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "They sense your magic, your power. They are simply curious." "Curious?" a voice sneered from behind them. "They are baffled. Wondering why the founders are paying such attention to a child who looks like a common street urchin." Harry turned to see a boy about his age, dressed in fine robes of green and silver. His hair was dark and slicked back, and his eyes were sharp with malice. There was something familiar about him, something that made Harry's skin crawl. "Ernest," Salazar said, his voice cold. "You would do well to hold your tongue." "Forgive me, uncle," the boy said, bowing with exaggerated courtesy. "I meant no offense. I was simply observing the truth." The word "uncle" hit Harry like a physical blow. This boy was Salazar's nephew? The realization brought with it a flood of other realizations, the dark hair, the sharp features, the sense of superiority. This was a Slytherin, through and through. And he was looking at Harry with undisguised contempt. "The truth is that you are being rude, Ernest," Godric said, stepping forward. "Harry is a guest in our home, and he will be treated with respect." Ernest's eyes flickered with something, jealousy, perhaps, or resentment. "Of course," he said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "I apologize for any offense I may have caused. Please, enjoy your meal." He turned and walked away, his robes swishing behind him. Harry watched him go, a knot of unease forming in his stomach. "Ignore him," Salazar said, but there was a tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before. "Ernest is difficult." "He's your nephew," Harry said. "I didn't know you had family." Salazar's expression was unreadable. "I have many family members, Harry. Most of them share my views on blood purity and magical heritage. I will not apologize for that, but I will also not allow them to mistreat you. You are family now too. In ways that matter far more than blood." Harry nodded, but the unease remained. He had seen the hate in Ernest's eyes, and he knew that it would not be the last time. The days that followed were a strange blend of the familiar and the new. Harry fell back into his routine of lessons with the founders, but now he was surrounded by other students. He attended classes with them, basic magic, potions, history, but he was far ahead of them in every subject. The founders had taught him things that most wizards would never learn, and he found himself growing impatient with the slow pace of the lessons. But there was more to his life now than simply learning. He was seen as a curiosity by the other students, a mysterious child who had appeared out of nowhere and claimed the attention of the founders. Some were friendly, eager to befriend him and share in his perceived power. Others were hostile, resentful of the favoritism he received. And then there was Ernest. Salazar's nephew seemed to have made it his personal mission to make Harry's life difficult. He mocked Harry's clothes, his speech, his lack of family. He spread rumors about Harry being a changeling, a monster, a demon sent to corrupt the founders. He gathered a group of followers around him, students from wealthy and powerful families who shared his prejudices. Harry tried to ignore them. He had been bullied before, by Dudley and his gang, and he knew that the best defense was to show no reaction. But it was harder here, in a place where he had finally found happiness. The cruelty of Ernest and his followers felt like a betrayal, a reminder that there would always be people who would hate him for what he was. It was Helga who noticed his distress. "You are hiding something," she said one afternoon, as they tended to the plants in the greenhouse. "Something that is weighing on you." Harry hesitated, not wanting to burden her with his problems. But Helga's gentle eyes coaxed the truth out of him, and he found himself telling her about Ernest, about the bullying, about the constant fear that he would lose everything again. "I don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "Why does he hate me?" I've never done anything to him. Helga sighed, setting down her pruning shears. Ernest is a product of his upbringing, Harry. His family believes in pure blood, that magic runs strongest in those who have no Muggle ancestry. They see you as a threat because you are powerful, despite coming from a mixed background. Your very existence challenges their beliefs. But it's not my fault, Harry said. I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose to be born. No, Helga agreed. But people like Ernest see the world in simple terms. Good and bad. Right and wrong. Powerful and weak. And they cannot accept that power can come from unexpected places. Harry thought about this, his mind turning over the implications. Does Salazar think like that too? He asked. Does he believe in pure blood? Helga was silent for a long moment. Salazar is complicated, she said at last. He has seen things in his life that have made him cautious. He trusts only those who have proven themselves loyal. But I truly believe that he cares for you, Harry. The ritual we performed, he would not have done it if he did not love you. Then why does he let Ernest treat me this way? Harry asked. Why doesn't he stop him? Because Ernest is his family, Helga said. And family ties run deep. Salazar believes in loyalty above all else. He will not turn against his own blood, even when they are wrong. Harry felt a cold knot settle in his stomach. So nothing will change, he said. Ernest will keep hating me, and Salazar will keep letting him. Helga reached out and took his hand. It will not always be like this, she said. You are growing stronger, Harry. Stronger than Ernest, stronger than anyone knows. And when you return to your own time, you will have the power to change everything. Do not let the cruelty of a few break your spirit. You are made for greater things. Harry wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that he could rise above the hate, that he could become the person she saw in him. But the fear remained, a quiet whisper in the back of his mind. As the weeks passed, Harry began to notice something strange about the other students. They avoided him. Not all of them, some were still friendly, still curious. But there was a growing sense of distance, a wariness in their eyes when they looked at him. Harry didn't understand what had changed, until one of the younger students finally explained. He said you were cursed, the boy whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Ernest Slytherin. He said you were marked by death itself, that you would bring ruin to anyone who got too close. Harry's blood ran cold. He had told no one about his encounter with death, not even the founders. How could Ernest know? But as he thought about it, he realized the truth. Ernest didn't know anything, he was simply spreading rumors, trying to turn the other students against Harry. And it was working. Harry tried to ignore the whispers, the looks, the sudden silence that fell whenever he entered a room. He tried to focus on his lessons, on his training, on the magic that hummed through his veins. But the isolation was wearing on him, eroding the confidence he had built in the founder's presence. He spent more and more time alone, wandering the castle's corridors and hidden passages. He found solace in the library, surrounded by ancient texts that held secrets no one else could understand. He found comfort in the greenhouses, where the plants responded to his touch with a warmth that felt almost like love. But the loneliness was always there, a shadow that followed him wherever he went. One evening, Harry was sitting in the library, reading a book on advanced warding techniques, when he heard a noise behind him. He turned to find Ernest standing in the doorway, flanked by two of his followers. Still hiding in the library, Potter? Ernest sneered. I suppose it makes sense, ugly creature like you wouldn't want to be seen in public. Harry closed his book, his heart racing. What do you want, Ernest? To give you a warning, Ernest said, stepping closer. You are not welcome here, Potter. You are an outsider, a fraud, a stain on the legacy of the founders. The only reason they tolerate you is because of some foolish sense of obligation. But that will not last. Eventually, they will see you for what you really are. And what's that? Harry asked, his voice steady despite the fear that had begun to claw at his chest. Ernest's smile was cold. A monster. A freak. The child of death itself. You think we don't know about your mark? The one on your forehead? We've seen it, Potter. That is the mark of a cursed soul. You will never be one of us. Never. Harry's hand instinctively went to his scar, hidden beneath his hair. How did Ernest know about it? The only people who had ever seen it were the Founders. I am one of you, Harry said, his voice tight. The Founders raised me. I am their student, their child. Nothing you say can change that. Believe what you want, Ernest said, shrugging. But remember my words, Potter. I will be watching. And when you finally slip, I will be there to push you over the edge. He turned and walked away, his followers trailing behind him. Harry sat in the library, trembling, and he felt something inside him begin to crack. He had thought he had escaped the cruelty of the Dursleys. He had thought the Founders would protect him, would love him, would make everything right. But Ernest's words had reminded him of the truth: he would always be an outsider. He would always be the freak, the cursed one, the child no one truly wanted. The tears came then, hot and silent, sliding down his cheeks. He tried to hold them back, tried to be strong, but they wouldn't stop. He was alone, so alone, and the darkness in his heart seemed to be spreading, consuming the light the Founders had worked so hard to kindle. It was Salazar who found him. The dark-haired Founder appeared in the doorway of the library, his expression shifting from surprise to concern when he saw Harry's tear-streaked face. Harry, he said, crossing the room in quick strides. What happened? Who did this to you? Harry tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He was shaking, his body racked with sobs that he couldn't control. Salazar knelt beside him, his hands gentle on Harry's shoulders. Tell me, he said, his voice low and urgent. Tell me who hurt you. Ernest, Harry managed. He said I was cursed. That I was a monster. That you would all abandon me eventually. Salazar's face went pale with anger. That boy, he hissed. I should have known. You can't blame him, Harry said, pulling away. He's your family. He's just saying what everyone else is thinking. I'm not one of you. I never will be. I'm just a freak that death dumped on your doorstep. Salazar reached out and grabbed Harry's chin, forcing him to meet his gaze. Listen to me, he said, his voice fierce. You are not a freak. You are not a monster. You are the child of our hearts, the product of our magic, and nothing will ever change that. But Ernest is a spoiled brat with too much power and not enough sense, Salazar said flatly. His father is my brother, and I love him despite his many flaws. But I will not let him destroy what we have built with you. Do you understand me, Harry? Harry nodded, but he didn't fully believe. How could he, when the fear was so deeply rooted in his soul? He had been abandoned before, betrayed by those who were supposed to love him. Why would this be any different? Salazar seemed to understand his doubt. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. I cannot promise that the road will be easy, he said. I cannot promise that people like Ernest will not try to hurt you. But I can promise you this, Harry, you have a family now. Not just me, not just the other Founders, but a family of 4 who love you more than you will ever know. And we will never let you go. Harry felt the tears threaten again, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. He threw his arms around Salazar, hugging him tightly, and he felt the stern wizard's arms wrap around him in return. I'm scared, Harry whispered. I'm scared of being alone again. You will never be alone, Salazar said. Not while I draw breath. And beyond that, the magic of the Founders will live on in you. You carry us with you, Harry. Always. The next day, Salazar confronted his nephew. Harry was not present for the confrontation, but he heard about it from Helga later. Salazar had cornered Ernest in the Great Hall, in front of all the students, and had publicly rebuked him for his behavior. He had called Ernest a coward, a bully, and a disgrace to the Slytherin name. And he had threatened to expel him if he ever dared to harm Harry again. It was a bold move, one that sent shockwaves through the school. Salazar's family was furious, and the pureblood students were in an uproar. But Salazar stood firm, refusing to back down. Ernest's father is threatening to cut off relations, Helga told Harry that evening, her expression troubled. Salazar's family is divided. Some of them support him, but others see this as a betrayal. What did Salazar say? Harry asked. He said that blood is not the only thing that makes a family, Helga said, her eyes shining with pride. He said that you are more family to him than any of them. And he meant every word, Harry. He truly meant it. Harry felt his heart swell with gratitude. Salazar had chosen him over his own family. He had risked everything to protect him. But the gratitude was mixed with fear. Ernest's father was powerful, and Salazar's enemies were growing. Harry didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew that it would be dangerous. He was right to be afraid. Weeks passed, and Ernest's hatred only grew. He didn't act openly, not after Salazar's confrontation. But Harry could feel his eyes on him, could sense the malice radiating from him like heat from a fire. It was only a matter of time before Ernest struck again. The attack came when Harry least expected it. He was walking through the castle's corridors late one evening, returning from the library, when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, but there was no one there. The corridor was empty, the torches flickering in their sconces. Then something hit him from behind, hard, and he went crashing to the floor. Pain exploded through his skull, and he felt blood trickling down his face. He tried to get up, but hands grabbed him, holding him down. Ernest's face appeared in his field of vision, twisted with triumph. "Did you really think I would just let you go?" he hissed. "You have humiliated me, Potter. You have turned my uncle against me. And now you will pay." Harry struggled, but Ernest was stronger, and his followers were holding him down. He felt a cold blade press against his throat, and his heart stopped. "Ernest, please," he gasped. "Please, don't do this. I'll leave. I'll go far away. You'll never see me again." "Too late for that," Ernest said, his eyes cold. "You should have left a long time ago. But now you're going to stay. Permanently." The blade pressed deeper, and Harry felt a sting of pain. He closed his eyes, waiting for the end, waiting for death to claim him again. But death did not come. Instead, there was a flash of light, and Ernest went flying backward, crashing into the wall with a sickening thud. His followers screamed and scattered, running for their lives. Harry opened his eyes to see Godric standing over him, his sword drawn and his face furious. "Are you all right?" Godric asked, his voice shaking with rage. "Harry, answer me." "I'm fine," Harry said, but his voice was weak, and he could feel the darkness closing in. "I'm fine. I just—" Then the darkness swallowed him. When Harry woke, he was in his bed, surrounded by the Founders. Helga was holding his hand, her face wet with tears. Rowena was standing by the window, her expression grim. Salazar was pacing back and forth, his fists clenched at his sides. And Godric was sitting beside the bed, his sword across his knees. "What happened?" Harry asked, his voice hoarse. "Ernest tried to kill you," Godric said, his voice cold. "He had a blade, an enchanted blade, designed to sever the soul from the body. He would have succeeded if I hadn't arrived when I did." Harry touched his throat, feeling the bandage that had been wrapped around it. He could feel the wound beneath, tender and raw. "Where is Ernest?" he asked. "He is in the dungeons," Salazar said, and his voice was icy. "He will remain there until we decide what to do with him." Harry felt a surge of anger. Ernest had tried to kill him, and he was simply being held in the dungeons. "You should execute him," he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "He is a murderer. He would have killed me if Godric hadn't intervened." The Founders exchanged startled glances. Harry didn't understand why they were looking at him like that until he realized what he had said. He had just suggested killing someone. "I'm sorry," he said, the anger fading, replaced by shame. "I didn't mean, I don't know why I said that." "Because you are angry," Salazar said, his voice softer now. And you have every right to be. But revenge will not heal your wounds, Harry. It will only create more. Harry looked down at his hands, trembling in his lap. I just want to be safe, he said. I just want everyone to stop hurting me. The founders gathered around him, their presence warm and protective. Helga pulled him into a hug, and Harry buried his face in her robes, breathing in the scent of lavender and earth. You are safe now, she said. We will not let anyone hurt you again. You have our word. The aftermath of the attack was complicated. Salazar's family demanded Ernest's release, arguing that he was just a boy who had made a mistake. The other founders refused, insisting that Ernest posed a danger to Harry and to the school. The argument grew heated, with accusations and threats flying on both sides. In the end, a compromise was reached. Ernest would be banished from Hogwarts, stripped of his title and inheritance. He would be sent to live with a distant branch of the family, far away from the school and from Harry. Harry watched Ernest leave, his heart a tangled mess of emotions. He was glad to see him go, but he was also afraid. Ernest's hatred would not fade just because he had been banished. It would fester, grow stronger, and someday it would return to haunt Harry again. But for now, Harry was safe. For now, he was surrounded by the love of the founders, and that was enough. The years that followed were peaceful. Harry grew older, stronger, more powerful. He mastered the ancient arts of the founders, delving deeper into their secrets than any student had before. He learned to create wards that could protect an entire castle, to heal wounds that would have been fatal to anyone else, to command the forces of nature with a single word. But more than the magic, Harry learned about himself. He learned that he was capable of great courage, great compassion, great cunning, and great wisdom. He learned that the founders' love had shaped him into something extraordinary. And he learned that he could face any challenge, as long as he remembered who he was and what he stood for. The memory stone around his neck held everything he had learned, the spells, the runes, the secrets of the ancient world. It would be his guide when he returned to his own time, his connection to the founders and their teachings. But there was something else the memory stone held. Something the founders had never told him about. Deep within the silver disc, hidden beneath layers of enchantment, there was a secret. A truth about the founders that would change everything Harry thought he knew about them. A truth that would reshape his understanding of magic and history and his own destiny. Harry didn't know it yet. He couldn't have known it. But the truth was waiting, patient and inevitable, like the dawn after a long night. And when he finally discovered it, Harry would realize that death had sent him back for a reason far greater than he could have ever imagined. Chapter 3, Learning Lost Magic. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the tower room, casting golden patterns across the stone floor. Harry sat cross-legged on a worn cushion, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and measured. The memory stone lay in his open palm, warm against his skin, and he could feel the ancient magic humming through it like a second heartbeat. Rowena watched him from her chair by the window, her silver-tinged hair catching the light. She had grown older in the years since Harry's return from the void, they all had, but her eyes remained sharp, her mind as keen as ever. Focus, she said, her voice soft but commanding. The runes are not just symbols. They are living things. They have weight, texture, meaning. You must feel them, not just see them. Harry nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. He had been studying ancient runes for years now, but this particular set, the Elder Futhark, Rowena called them, was proving more difficult than anything he had encountered before. They were older than the founders themselves, older than any civilization Harry knew of, and they vibrated with a power that made his teeth ache. He opened his eyes and looked at the rune carved into the stone before him. It was a simple shape, a straight line with two diagonal branches, but it seemed to shift and pulse as he watched it. Ansuz, Rowena said. The rune of communication, of divine inspiration, of the breath of life. What does it tell you? Harry studied the rune, letting his mind go blank. He had learned to approach magic not with force but with openness, allowing the meaning to come to him rather than trying to grasp it. The rune whispered to him. It spoke of voices carried on the wind, of words that had power beyond their mere sound, of the connection between thought and speech and the universe itself. It's about speaking, Harry said slowly. But not just speaking. It's about understanding the truth behind the words. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Rowena smiled, a rare expression of approval. Excellent. You are beginning to understand the deeper layers of meaning. The runes are not just a language, they are a key. A key to the fundamental building blocks of existence. She rose from her chair and walked to the table where Harry sat, her robes rustling against the stone floor. She placed her hand over his, and he felt a surge of warmth spread through his palm. Now, she said, try to inscribe it. Not on stone, not on paper. In the air itself. Harry closed his eyes again, focusing on the shape of the rune in his mind. He traced it in the air with his finger, and a line of silver light followed his movement, hanging suspended in the space before him. The rune glowed for a moment, then faded. Good, Rowena said. Now try to hold it longer. Make it solid. Harry tried again, pouring more of his magic into the motion. This time, the rune remained, burning bright in the air like a star. He could feel its meaning radiating from it, filling the room with a gentle hum. Very good, Rowena said. You have just created a permanent mark in the fabric of reality. That rune will remain there until someone removes it. It will influence the magic of this room for as long as it exists. Harry stared at the glowing rune, his heart swelling with pride. He had done something truly magical, something that would have been impossible with modern spells. This was the kind of power the founders wielded, the kind of power that had been lost to the world. Can I use this to protect people? He asked. To ward the castle. That is exactly what it is for, Rowena said. But the runes alone are not enough. They must be combined with intent, with emotion, with the living energy of the caster. A rune without purpose is just a mark. A rune with purpose is a shield. Harry nodded, already planning how he might use this new knowledge. He had learned to ward small spaces, his room, the greenhouses, the library, but the castle itself was a massive structure, and the protections the founders had placed around it were beginning to weaken. If Harry could reinforce them with runes, the school would be safer than ever before. The afternoon sun was warm on Harry's face as he made his way to the dungeons. Salazar had summoned him for a lesson, and Harry knew better than to keep him waiting. The dungeons were cool and dim, lit by torches that burned with an eerie green flame. Harry had grown accustomed to the strange light over the years, but it still sent a shiver down his spine whenever he entered the Slytherin founder's domain. Salazar was waiting for him in the central chamber, surrounded by ancient texts and bubbling cauldrons. He looked up when Harry entered, his dark eyes glinting with interest. You are late, he said, but there was no reproach in his voice. I hope you have a good reason. I was with Rowena, Harry said. She was teaching me about the Elder Futhark. Salazar's eyebrows rose. The Elder Futhark? That is advanced magic, even for you. How did you find it? It was difficult, Harry admitted. But I think I'm starting to understand it. The runes have meaning beyond their surface symbols. They connect to the deep currents of magic. Salazar nodded slowly. You are a quick learner, Harry. Quicker than any student I have ever taught. That is both a gift and a burden. It means you will have power beyond what most wizards can imagine. But it also means you will face dangers that most wizards cannot comprehend. He gestured for Harry to sit, then took a seat across from him. The table between them was covered in scrolls and diagrams, each one detailing some aspect of ancient magic. I want to teach you something that Rowena would not approve of, Salazar said, his voice low. Something that I have kept hidden even from my fellow founders. This magic is dangerous, Harry. It can corrupt if used wrongly. But if used correctly, it can save lives. Harry leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. What is it? Salazar unrolled a scroll, revealing a complex diagram of interlocking circles and symbols. At the center of the diagram was a serpent, its body coiled around a sword. This is the art of soul magic, Salazar said. The ability to touch, to influence, and to protect the very essence of a person's being. It is the deepest and most powerful form of magic there is. And it is the most dangerous. Harry stared at the diagram, his heart racing. Soul magic. He had heard of it in whispers, in the hushed warnings of the founders. It was said to be forbidden, to have been banned by the ancient wizards who came before. Why are you teaching me this? Harry asked. If it's so dangerous. Because you will need it, Salazar said. The Dark Lord you face in the future, he has split his soul. He has created objects called Horcruxes that anchor him to life. Without soul magic, you will never be able to defeat him completely. You might destroy his body, but his spirit will live on. Harry felt cold. The Dark Lord he had seen in his visions, the man who had killed his parents, was already planning to cheat death. And Harry would need to stop him. How do I do it? He asked, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. Salazar smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. You are brave, Harry. Braver than you know. He placed a hand on the diagram, and the serpent began to glow. First, you must learn to see souls. To sense them, to feel their shape and texture. It is not something that can be taught through words. It must be experienced. He reached out and placed his hand on Harry's chest, over his heart. Harry felt a jolt of something, not pain, but a deep resonance that shook him to his core. Close your eyes, Salazar said. And reach inside yourself. Find your own soul. Feel its shape. Harry closed his eyes, focusing inward. He had done this before, when he was learning to feel his magic. But this was different. This was deeper. He pushed past the surface layers of his consciousness, past the thoughts and emotions that usually filled his mind, until he reached something that felt like the core of his being. It was warm and bright, like a star burning in the darkness of his chest. He could feel it pulsing with life, with power, with everything that made him who he was. I see it, he whispered. I see my soul. Good, Salazar said. Now, hold that image in your mind. And reach out to me. Find my soul. Harry extended his awareness, reaching out from his core toward Salazar. He felt resistance at first, like pushing through water. But then something gave way, and he was touching something vast and ancient, something that hummed with power and wisdom and shadow. Salazar's soul was beautiful and terrifying. It was like a forest at midnight, full of life and mystery and hidden dangers. Harry could feel the centuries of experience, the love and the loss, the secrets that had been kept for generations. He opened his eyes, gasping. I felt it, he said. I felt your soul. Salazar withdrew his hand, his expression unreadable. You are a natural, Harry. Most wizards spend years learning to do what you just did in minutes. You have a gift for soul magic, whether you know it or not. Harry felt a mixture of pride and unease. He had touched something sacred, something that was not meant to be touched. But he had done it because he needed to learn. Because the future depended on it. I want to learn more, he said. I want to understand everything you know. Salazar's smile was cold, but his eyes were warm. Then we will begin. The training was grueling. Salazar pushed Harry to his limits and beyond, teaching him to see souls, to sense their emotions and intentions, to protect his own soul from intrusion. Harry practiced for hours every day, his mind and spirit stretched to their breaking point. But slowly, painfully, he began to understand. He learned to read the emotions of those around him, to feel their joy, their fear, their pain. He learned to strengthen his own soul, to build defenses that would keep out even the most determined attacker. He learned to recognize the signs of soul corruption, the dark stains that appeared when a wizard used forbidden magic. It was the most difficult thing Harry had ever done. But it was also the most rewarding. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Salazar sat back and studied Harry with an expression of deep thought. You have learned much, he said. But there is one more thing you must know. One more secret that I have not yet shared with you. Harry looked up, his body aching and his mind exhausted. What is it? Salazar reached into his robes and drew out a small box, carved from dark wood and inlaid with silver. He opened it carefully, revealing a ring that gleamed with a sickly green light. This is a Horcrux, Salazar said. A container for a piece of a soul. It was made by a dark wizard centuries ago, one who sought immortality at any cost. It is the most evil thing I have ever encountered. Harry stared at the ring, his skin crawling. He could feel the wrongness radiating from it, a coldness that seemed to seep into his bones. Why do you have it? He asked. Because I defeated the wizard who created it, Salazar said. And I took it from him. I have been studying it for years, trying to understand how to destroy it. But the magic is old and powerful. I have not yet found a way. He placed the ring on the table between them, and Harry felt the weight of its presence settle over him. It was like a shadow, dark and oppressive, pressing down on his spirit. Can I touch it? Harry asked. Salazar hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. It will try to influence you, to make you covet it, to make you want to use it for yourself. But you must resist. You must remember what it truly is. Harry reached out with trembling fingers, his heart pounding in his chest. The ring was cold, colder than ice, and it seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. He could feel the soul fragment inside. It, trapped and screaming, desperate to be free. This is what the Dark Lord will create, Harry said, his voice barely a whisper. He will do this to himself. He will tear his soul apart to avoid death. Yes, Salazar said. And that is why you must learn to destroy them. Because when you face him, his Horcruxes will be his weakness. If you can find them and destroy them, you can defeat him once and for all. Harry pulled his hand back, his skin tingling with revulsion. I will find a way, he said. I will learn to destroy them. I promise. Salazar nodded, his dark eyes filled with something that looked almost like pride. I know you will, Harry. You are the child of prophecy. You were born for this. The summer months brought a different kind of training. Godric took Harry out of the castle and into the wilderness, where the lessons were not about magic but about survival. They trekked through forests, climbed mountains, swam across freezing rivers. Harry learned to track animals, to build shelters, to read the land and the sky. Magic is powerful, Godric said one evening, as they sat by a campfire under a canopy of stars. But it is not everything. A wizard who relies only on magic is a wizard who is vulnerable. If your magic fails you, you must be able to rely on your body and your mind. Harry nodded, exhaustion weighing down his limbs but a fire burning in his chest. He had learned more in the past few months than in all his years in the castle. He had learned to be strong, to be resourceful, to never give up. When I return to my own time, he said, I will be ready. I will be able to face anything. Godric smiled, the firelight dancing in his eyes. I know you will, little one. I have seen the man you are becoming. And I am proud of you. But the most important lessons came from Helga. She taught Harry about healing, about the connection between all living things. She taught him to listen to the plants, to understand the animals, to feel the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. The world is alive, she said, as they walked through the forest. Every tree, every rock, every stream. They all have their own spirit, their own magic. And when you learn to connect with them, you become part of something greater than yourself. Harry closed his eyes, letting his senses extend outward. He could feel the trees around him, their roots deep in the earth, their branches reaching toward the sky. He could feel the animals, small and large, going about their lives. He could feel the water in the streams, flowing endlessly toward the sea. It was beautiful and overwhelming, and Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. I never knew it was like this, he said. I never knew the world was so alive. It is always alive, Helga said. But most people are too busy to notice. They are too caught up in their own lives, their own problems. They forget that they are part of something larger. She placed a hand on his shoulder, and Harry felt her warmth spread through him. Remember this, Harry. Remember that you are not alone. That you are connected to everything. That is the true power of magic, not control, but connection. Harry nodded, his heart full. He would never forget this. He would never forget any of it. The years passed, and Harry continued to learn. He mastered the art of alchemy, learning to transform base metals into gold and create elixirs that could heal any wound. He studied the stars, learning to read the patterns of the constellations and predict the future. He delved into the depths of ancient magic, uncovering secrets that had been buried for millennia. And through it all, the founders were there, guiding him, teaching him, loving him. But Harry began to notice something strange. The founders were hiding something from him. It was subtle at first, a hesitation in their words, a glance exchanged between them when they thought he wasn't looking. But as the years passed, Harry became more attuned to the undercurrents of their behavior, and he realized that there were things they were not telling him. He confronted Rowena first. "I know you're hiding something," he said one evening, after a particularly tense lesson. "All of you. I can feel it. There's a secret you're keeping from me." Rowena's face went still, her eyes unreadable. "What makes you think that, Harry?" "Because I can sense it," Harry said. "I've been learning soul magic. I can feel when people are holding back. And you are all holding back. You're afraid of telling me something." Rowena was silent for a long moment, then she sighed. "You are too perceptive for your own good," she said. "Yes, there is something we have not told you. Something about your past, about the magic that brought you here." Harry's heart began to race. "What is it?" "I cannot tell you," Rowena said. "Not yet. It is not my secret to share. But I promise you, Harry, we will tell you when the time is right. When you are ready." "When will that be?" Harry demanded. "I am ready now. I have been ready for years." Rowena shook her head. "You are not ready, Harry. You are powerful, yes. You are wise beyond your years. But there are things about the past that you are not prepared to understand. Trust me. Trust us. We will tell you when the time comes." Harry wanted to argue, to push harder, but he could see the genuine pain in Rowena's eyes. She was not trying to hurt him. She was trying to protect him. "Fine," he said, his voice tight. "I'll trust you. But I want to know the truth. Eventually." Rowena nodded, her expression sad. "You will, Harry. You will." The secret haunted Harry. He could feel it pressing against the edges of his consciousness, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. He tried to ignore it, to focus on his studies, but it was always there, a shadow in the back of his mind. He spent more and more time with the memory stone, trying to unlock its secrets. He had learned to access the surface layers of knowledge, the spells, the runes, the ancient wisdom the founders had embedded within it. But there was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. A truth that had been waiting for him for all these years. And as he delved deeper into the stone's mysteries, Harry began to understand something important. The founders had not just given him their magic. They had given him themselves. The ritual that had bound him to them had not just connected him to their power, it had connected him to their very souls. And in those souls, he could sense the secret they were keeping. It was about Salazar. Something dark and terrible that had happened before Harry's arrival. Something that had changed the course of history. And in that moment, Harry knew what he had to do. He had to find the truth. No matter what it cost him. The library was empty when Harry entered, the ancient tomes silent on their shelves. He had come here many times over the years, seeking answers to questions that had haunted him. But tonight, he was looking for something specific. He had found references to the Horcrux ring Salazar had shown him, mentions of the wizard who had created it, the dark sorcerer who had terrorized the land centuries ago. But the references were fragmentary, scattered across different texts, as if someone had deliberately tried to erase the man from history. But Harry was patient. He had learned to piece together fragments, to follow the threads of evidence wherever they led. And after hours of searching, he found it. A journal, hidden in a secret compartment behind a loose stone. The leather was cracked and faded, the pages yellowed with age. But the writing was clear, and it was in a hand Harry recognized. Salazar's hand. Harry opened the journal with trembling fingers, his heart pounding in his chest. He read the first entry, then the second, and then he couldn't stop. The journal told the story of a young wizard, brilliant and ambitious, who had sought to unlock the secrets of immortality. He had discovered the Horcrux ritual, had created a ring to house a fragment of his soul. And then he had done something terrible. Something that had doomed him to darkness. He had killed an innocent. A child. A child who had trusted him, loved him, believed in him. The wizard's name was Salazar Slytherin. Harry dropped the journal, his hands shaking uncontrollably. This couldn't be true. It couldn't be. Salazar was not a murderer. He was not a dark wizard. He was the man who had raised Harry, who had taught him, who had loved him. But the evidence was there, written in his own hand. Salazar had created a Horcrux. He had killed a child to do it. And then he had hidden the truth, buried it so deep that even his fellow founders didn't know. Or did they? Harry thought of the secret the founders had been keeping, the knowledge that Rowena had refused to share. Was this it? Did they know about Salazar's past? Were they trying to protect Harry from the truth? He felt sick. He felt betrayed. The man he had looked up to, the man he had trusted with his life, had done something unforgivable. Harry closed the journal and placed it back in the secret compartment. He would confront Salazar about this. He would demand the truth, demand an explanation. But not tonight. Tonight, he needed to think. He needed to process what he had learned. He left the library and walked through the dark corridors of the castle, his mind churning with questions. Why had Salazar done it? What had driven him to such darkness? And how could Harry ever trust him again? The moon was high and full, casting silver light across the courtyard. Harry stood in the center, staring up at the stars, and he felt a sudden surge of emotion. He was angry, hurt, confused. But beneath all of that, there was something else. Something that surprised him. He understood. Salazar had been afraid. Afraid of death, afraid of losing everything he had built, afraid of the darkness that was consuming the world. And in his fear, he had made a terrible choice. A choice that had damned him. But he had also made another choice. A choice to change, to seek redemption, to protect the innocent. He had destroyed the Horcrux, had buried its remains in a vault beneath the castle. He had dedicated his life to fighting against the very darkness he had once embraced. Harry didn't know if he could forgive Salazar. He didn't know if he could ever look at him the same way again. But he understood. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The confrontation came the next day. Harry found Salazar in his study, surrounded by scrolls and ancient texts. The dark-haired founder looked up as Harry entered, his expression guarded. "You found the journal," Salazar said, before Harry could speak. "I knew you would, eventually. You are too curious, too persistent." Harry felt a surge of anger. "You knew. And you didn't tell me. You let me believe you were someone you're not. Because I wanted you to see me as I am now," Salazar said, his voice quiet. "Not as I was. I was a fool, Harry. A young, arrogant fool who thought he could conquer death. I did terrible things, things I will never forgive myself for. But I changed. I became someone different. Someone who could be worthy of your trust." "Worthy?" Harry laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You killed a child, Salazar. An innocent child. How could you ever be worthy of anyone's trust?" Salazar flinched, the first time Harry had ever seen him show such vulnerability. "I know," he said. "I know what I did. And I have lived with the guilt every day for centuries." The child's name was Thomas. He was 8 years old, and he trusted me completely. I killed him for my own selfish desire, and I have never forgiven myself. Harry felt tears burning in his eyes. "Why are you telling me this? Why are you making me see the worst of you?" Because you deserve to know the truth, Salazar said. You deserve to know who I really am. Not the legend, not the founder, but the man. The flawed, broken man who has tried to atone for his sins. Harry looked at Salazar, truly looked at him, and he saw the weight of guilt and remorse. He saw the centuries of pain, the endless struggle to make amends. He saw a man who had been broken by his past, and who had tried to rebuild himself into something better. I don't know if I can forgive you, Harry said, his voice barely a whisper. But I understand. And maybe that's enough. For now. Salazar nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Thank you, Harry. That is more than I deserve. Harry turned to leave, but Salazar's voice stopped him at the door. Harry, he said. The secret I have kept, the secret I have carried all these years, it is why death sent you to us. To learn from our mistakes. To break the cycle of darkness that has plagued the magical world for centuries. You are the hope for the future. And I believe you will succeed. Harry didn't respond. He walked out of the study and into the corridor, his heart heavy with everything he had learned. But deep inside, something had shifted. He had seen the worst of Salazar, had stared into the darkness of his soul. And he had not turned away. He had not abandoned him. Maybe that was what it meant to be a founder. Not to be perfect, but to acknowledge your flaws and strive to be better. Maybe that was what Harry was meant to become. The nights were hardest. Harry lay in his bed, unable to sleep, the weight of Salazar's confession pressing down on his chest. He had learned so much in the years he had been with the founders, magic that had been lost to time, wisdom that had shaped the world. But the secret of the Horcrux had changed something in him. He saw the founders differently now, not as mythical figures but as people. Flawed, complicated, human. And he saw himself differently, too. He had been sent back in time for a reason, not just to learn magic, but to understand the darkness that lurked in the hearts of even the greatest wizards. The prophecy that had marked him was not just about Voldemort. It was about the cycle of hatred, fear, and power that had plagued the magical world since the beginning. And Harry was meant to break that cycle. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. He had been given a purpose, a mission that went beyond his own survival. He was meant to heal a world that had been broken for centuries. But could he do it? Could he really be the one to bring about such profound change? He touched the memory stone around his neck, feeling its warmth. The founders believed in him. They had given him everything they had, entrusted him with their legacies. He couldn't let them down. The next morning, Harry went to Helga. She was in the greenhouse, tending to her plants, and she looked up with a gentle smile as he entered. But the smile faded when she saw the expression on his face. Harry, she said. What's wrong? He told her everything. About the journal, about Salazar's confession, about the weight that had settled on his shoulders. He told her about his fears, his doubts, his uncertainty about the future. Helga listened in silence, her hands never stopping their work. When he had finished, she set down her tools and pulled him into a warm embrace. You are stronger than you know, she said. Stronger than any of us. You have faced the darkest truths of the past, and you have not been broken. That is what makes you worthy of carrying the founder's legacy. But I don't feel strong, Harry said, his voice muffled against her robes. I feel scared. I feel lost. Then that is what strength is, Helga said. Feeling scared and lost, and doing what needs to be done anyway. You have the courage of Godric, the wisdom of Rowena, the cunning of Salazar, and the love of me. You carry all of us with you, Harry. You will never be alone. Harry pulled back, wiping his eyes. I want to do this right, he said. I want to make you proud. Helga smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You already have, Harry. You already have. The seasons continued to turn, and Harry continued to learn. He mastered the arts of combat, the secrets of potions, the mysteries of the stars. He learned to fight with sword and spell, to survive in the harshest of conditions, to heal wounds that no modern medicine could touch. But more importantly, he learned about people. He watched the founders interact with their students, their families, their enemies. He saw the way they navigated the complex web of politics and power, the way they balanced their ideals with the realities of the world. He saw their strengths and their weaknesses, their triumphs and their failures. And he began to understand what it truly meant to be a founder. It was not about power. It was not about legacy. It was about building something that would endure, something that would protect and nurture future generations. It was about making the world a better place, even when the world fought against you. One evening, near the end of Harry's training, the founders gathered in the Great Hall. The castle was quiet, the students asleep in their dormitories. The four founders stood together, their faces illuminated by the flickering candlelight. "Harry," Rowena said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "You have learned everything we have to teach you. You have mastered the ancient arts, understood the secrets of the past. But there is one more lesson you must learn. One more truth you must understand." Harry stepped forward, his heart pounding. He had known this moment was coming. He had felt it building, like a storm on the horizon. "What is it?" he asked. Godric stepped forward, drawing his sword. "The lesson of sacrifice," he said. "The understanding that sometimes, to save the ones you love, you must be willing to lose everything." Helga took Harry's hands in hers, her eyes filled with warmth. "But sacrifice is not the same as giving up," she said. "It is not about losing hope. It is about finding the strength to protect what matters most, no matter the cost." Rowena placed a hand on his head, and Harry felt a surge of wisdom flooding through him. "You must be willing to face the darkness," she said. "To look into the abyss and not blink. To stand firm, even when everything tells you to run." Salazar knelt before him, his dark eyes piercing Harry's soul. "And you must remember that you are not alone," he said. "The magic of the founders lives in you, Harry. We are with you always. In your courage, your wisdom, your heart, your cunning. You carry the legacy of Hogwarts in your very soul." Harry felt tears streaming down his face. He knew what they were telling him, what they were preparing him for. He would have to leave them. He would have to return to his own time, to face the darkness that awaited him. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "Thank you for everything. I will never forget this. I will never forget you." The founders gathered around him, their arms wrapped around him in a warm embrace. They held him like that for a long moment, silent and still. And then, one by one, they stepped back. "It is time," Godric said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The prophecy calls you home. Go now, Harry. And know that we will be watching." Harry nodded, wiping his eyes. He looked at each of them, Godric, Rowena, Helga, Salazar. He memorized their faces, their smiles, the love in their eyes. "I will make you proud," he said. "I promise." And then the darkness took him once more. Chapter 4, The Secret Through Time. The darkness was different this time. It was not the empty void of his first journey, nor the chaotic turbulence of his second. This was a corridor, a long, winding passage that stretched infinitely in both directions, its walls made of shifting shadows and flickering light. Harry walked forward, his footsteps echoing in the silence, and he could feel the presence of something vast and ancient all around him. Time itself. He could see it in the walls, in the way the shadows moved and shifted to reveal images from across the centuries. A king being crowned. A castle under siege. A child learning to fly. Each image was a moment, frozen and preserved, and Harry realized he was walking through the very fabric of history. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice swallowed by the endless corridor. "You are between," Death's voice answered, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Between the past and the future. Between what was and what will be. This is the place where time touches eternity." Harry stopped, turning in a slow circle. The images on the walls continued to shift, showing him glimpses of his own life, the cupboard under the stairs, the founder's castle, the faces of the people he had loved and lost. Why have you brought me here? He asked. I thought I was returning to my own time. You are, Death said. But first, you must understand. The founders taught you magic, taught you wisdom, taught you love. But they could not teach you the truth. Not the whole truth. That is why I have brought you here. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. What truth? The shadows on the walls began to coalesce, forming a single image. It was a scene Harry recognized, the Great Hall of Hogwarts, filled with students and teachers. But the faces were different, the robes were different, and the atmosphere was charged with tension. This is the future, Death said. The time you are meant to return to. But look closer, Harry. Look at what lies beneath the surface. Harry stepped closer to the wall, peering into the image. The students were whispering, their faces filled with fear. The teachers were gathered around a central figure, a man with a long white beard and twinkling eyes. Albus Dumbledore. What's happening? Harry asked. Voldemort has returned, Death said. The wizarding world is at war. And you, Harry Potter, are the only one who can stop him. Harry felt a knot of fear tighten in his chest. He had known this was coming, had been preparing for it for years. But seeing it, seeing the fear on the faces of the people he was meant to protect, made it feel painfully real. Why am I the only one? He asked. Why can't someone else do it? Because of the prophecy, Death said. The prophecy that marked you as Voldemort's equal. But that prophecy was not just about the future, Harry. It was also about the past. About a choice that was made centuries ago, a choice that set the course of history. The image on the wall shifted, and Harry saw a new scene, a dark forest, lit by the pale glow of the moon. Two figures stood in a clearing, their faces hidden in shadow. One was tall and cloaked, the other smaller, younger. Salazar, Harry breathed, recognizing the younger figure. And the dark wizard who created the Horcrux. Yes, Death said. You have learned about Salazar's past, about the Horcrux he created and destroyed. But you do not know the full story. You do not know what happened in this forest. What was said? What was decided? Harry watched the scene unfold, his heart racing. The two figures were speaking, their voices low and urgent. Salazar was pleading, his hands outstretched. The cloaked figure was shaking his head, his words cold and final. He refused to help, Harry said, understanding dawning. The dark wizard refused to teach Salazar how to destroy the Horcrux. Yes, Death said. But that was not the end of the story. That was only the beginning. The image shifted again, and Harry saw a new scene, a castle, not Hogwarts but an older, darker structure. Salazar was there, and he was not alone. 3 other figures stood with him, Godric, Rowena, and Helga. They were arguing, their voices rising in anger. He will destroy everything we have built, Salazar was saying, his voice desperate. He has already begun. We must stop him. We cannot, Rowena said, her voice cold. He is too powerful, too well protected. If we attack, we will lose everything. Then we must find another way, Godric said. We must find his weakness. Helga stepped forward, her face filled with sorrow. There is no weakness, she said. He is beyond redemption. He has already divided his soul, hidden his Horcruxes where no one can find them. He is immortal. Salazar's face twisted with rage. Then we will find a way to make him mortal. We will discover the secret of destroying Horcruxes. We will uncover the magic that can undo what he has done. The image faded, and Harry felt the weight of what he had just witnessed. The founders had known about the Dark Wizard. They had known about the Horcruxes. And they had been trying to stop him. Why didn't you tell me this? Harry asked. Why did you keep it hidden? Because the truth is not just about the past, Death said. It is also about the future. About you. About the role you are meant to play in the events to come. Harry shook his head, his mind reeling. I don't understand. What does any of this have to do with me? The shadows on the walls began to shift again, forming a new image. It was a child, a baby, wrapped in a blanket, with a familiar scar on his forehead. Harry felt his breath catch in his throat. The prophecy, Death said, was not just about you. It was about the magic that flows through your veins. The magic of the Founders. The magic that was woven into your soul when they performed the binding ritual. You are not just a wizard, Harry Potter. You are a vessel. A vessel for the power of the Founders, the power that was meant to defeat the darkness. Harry stared at the image of the baby, at the lightning bolt scar that had marked him since he was a year old. The scar, he said. It's not just a curse, is it? It's a connection. A connection to the Dark Lord. Yes, Death said. Voldemort marked you as his equal, but he also gave you a gift, a connection to his soul, to his magic. And that connection allows you to see into his mind, to understand his thoughts, to find his weaknesses. It is your greatest weapon and your greatest burden. Harry touched his forehead, feeling the familiar ridges of the scar. He had always hated it, had always seen it as a reminder of everything he had lost. But now, he saw it differently. It was not just a curse. It was a tool. A tool that could be used to defeat the Dark Lord once and for all. The Founders knew about this, Harry said. They knew about the connection. They prepared me for it. Yes, Death said. They trained you to control it, to use it, to protect yourself from its influence. Everything they did was in preparation for this moment, the moment when you would return to your own time and face the Dark Lord. Harry felt a surge of gratitude for the Founders. They had given him everything, their knowledge, their love, their very souls. And now, he understood why. They had been preparing him for the battle of his life. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for showing me the truth. The truth is only the beginning, Death said. Now, you must walk the rest of the path. The corridor will take you to your own time, to the moment you left. But you must be ready, Harry. You must be strong. The darkness that awaits you is greater than anything you have faced before. The corridor began to shift, the walls dissolving into a swirling mass of light and shadow. Harry felt himself being pulled forward, faster and faster, and he knew that he was approaching the end of his journey. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the transition. And then, with a sound like a thunderclap, he was there. The cupboard under the stairs was small and dark, just as he remembered it. But there was something different about it, something that made his skin prickle with awareness. The air was thick with magic, and he could feel the presence of the memory stone against his chest, warm and pulsing with power. He had returned. Harry sat up slowly, his head spinning. The cupboard was exactly as he had left it, the thin mattress, the cracked shoes, the tiny sliver of light beneath the door. But he was not the same person who had left it. He was older, wiser, and infinitely more powerful. And he knew what he had to do. He reached out with his mind, probing the edges of the magic that surrounded him. The wards that protected the house were weak, barely a whisper of their former strength. He could break through them with a thought, could walk out of the cupboard and into the world without anyone stopping him. But he didn't. Not yet. He needed to understand the time he had returned to. He needed to know what had changed, what had stayed the same, and what he was up against. He closed his eyes and reached out with his senses, letting his magic flow through the house and into the world beyond. He could feel the neighborhood, the town, the country. He could feel the pulse of magic in the air, the threads of destiny weaving together in patterns that had been centuries in the making. And he could feel the presence of the Dark Lord. Voldemort was out there, somewhere, his malevolent power radiating like a beacon in the darkness. Harry could feel his hatred, his ambition, his fear. It was overwhelming, a tide of emotion that threatened to drown him. But Harry had faced worse. He had faced the truth of Salazar's past, had seen the horrors that the Dark Lord was capable of. He had been trained by the Founders themselves, and he was not afraid. Stay strong, he whispered to himself. Remember what they taught you. Remember who you are. He reached for the memory stone, and the knowledge of the Founders flooded into him. He could feel their presence, their love, their guidance. They were with him, always, and they would never abandon him. The next few days were a blur of careful observation and cautious movement. Harry used his magic to remain invisible to the Dursleys, moving through the house like a ghost. He watched them from the shadows, studying their behavior, their habits, their routines. He learned when they were most vulnerable, when they were most dangerous, and when he could slip away unnoticed. He also began to investigate the wizarding world, using the ancient techniques the founders had taught him. He read the thoughts of the neighbors, gathered information from the magical creatures that passed through the area, and listened to the whispers of the wind that carried news from afar. And what he learned was troubling. Voldemort's power was growing. The wizarding world was in chaos, its leaders divided and uncertain. Dumbledore's influence was waning, and the Ministry of Magic was riddled with corruption and fear. The war was escalating, and innocent people were dying. But there was also hope. A small group of wizards and witches were fighting back, refusing to surrender to the darkness. They were called the Order of the Phoenix, and they were led by Dumbledore himself. Harry knew that he had to find them, had to join them. But he also knew that he couldn't reveal himself too soon. He had to be careful, had to protect his identity and his power until the right moment. The first real test of Harry's resolve came on a night in late summer. He was in the garden of No. 4 Privet Drive, practicing his magic under the cover of darkness, when he felt a presence. Someone was watching him, someone with a cold and malevolent intent. He spun around, his wand raised, and found himself facing a figure that seemed to be made of shadows. It was a Dementor, one of the dark creatures that served Voldemort, feeding on the happiness and hope of its victims. Harry felt the cold emanating from the creature, felt it trying to suck the joy from his soul. But he had been trained by the founders, and he was not defenseless. Expecto Patronum, he shouted, and a burst of silver light exploded from his wand. The light took the shape of a stag, antlers raised and eyes blazing, and it charged at the Dementor with a fury that was almost palpable. The Dementor screamed, a high, piercing sound that seemed to shake the very air. It retreated, fleeing into the darkness from which it had come. Harry stood in the garden, his heart racing, his wand still raised. The Patronus was fading, its silver glow dissipating like morning mist. But the stag had been magnificent, a testament to the power he had gained from the founders. He had done it. He had faced a Dementor and won. The founders would have been proud. But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, Harry received a letter from the Ministry of Magic, accusing him of performing magic in the presence of a Muggle. It was a serious offense, and the penalty was severe, expulsion from Hogwarts and the destruction of his wand. Harry knew that he had to act quickly. He couldn't afford to be expelled, couldn't afford to lose his connection to the magical world. He had to find a way to prove his innocence, to convince the Ministry that he had acted in self-defense. He remembered what the founders had taught him about the importance of allies, of building relationships that would serve him in times of need. And so he reached out to the one person he knew would help him. Albus Dumbledore. It was a dangerous move. Dumbledore was a powerful wizard, a brilliant strategist, and a man with a mysterious agenda. Harry didn't know if he could trust him. But he knew that Dumbledore was his best chance of surviving the chaos that was to come. He sent a message, a small, enchanted bird that would carry his words to the headmaster of Hogwarts. And then he waited. Dumbledore arrived 3 days later. He appeared in the garden of No. 4 Privet Drive, his robes swirling around him and his blue eyes twinkling with an intensity that made Harry feel both comforted and wary. "Harry Potter," Dumbledore said, his voice warm but firm. "I have been looking for you for a long time." Harry stepped forward, his heart pounding. He had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed the words he would say. But now that Dumbledore was here, he found himself at a loss. "I need your help," he said. "There's something you need to know. Something about the past, about the founders, about what I've become." Dumbledore raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "I have a feeling that this is a story I need to hear. Let us go somewhere more private." He extended his hand, and Harry took it. There was a rush of wind, a sensation of being pulled through space, and then they were in a small room filled with books and trinkets, Dumbledore's office at Hogwarts. Harry looked around, his breath catching in his throat. He had never been here before, but it felt familiar, as if he had dreamed of it 1,000 times. "Sit," Dumbledore said, gesturing to a chair. "And tell me everything." Harry told him. He told him about the cupboard under the stairs, about the encounter with death, about the journey back in time. He told him about the founders, about the years of training, about the secrets they had shared. He told him about Salazar's past, about the Horcrux, about the prophecy that had marked him for greatness. Dumbledore listened in silence, his face unreadable. When Harry had finished, he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. "I knew," he said at last. "Not all of it, not the details. But I knew that there was something special about you, Harry. Something that set you apart from other wizards. I just didn't know the full extent of it." Harry felt a surge of anger. "You knew. You knew about the founders, about the prophecy, about everything, and you didn't tell me?" "I couldn't," Dumbledore said, his voice heavy with regret. "There were things that needed to happen, choices you needed to make on your own. If I had revealed too much too soon, you might not have been ready." "Ready?" Harry laughed, a bitter sound. "I was 6 years old. I was trapped in a cupboard, surrounded by people who hated me. I was never ready." "No," Dumbledore agreed. "But you grew ready. You became the person you were meant to be. And now, you are here, the most powerful wizard of your generation, armed with the knowledge of the founders. The world needs you, Harry. And I believe you will rise to the challenge." Harry felt the anger begin to fade, replaced by a sense of resolve. Dumbledore had kept secrets from him, had manipulated events to shape his destiny. But he had also believed in Harry, had given him the space to grow and become the person he was. "I want to help," Harry said. "I want to fight against Voldemort. But I don't want to be a pawn. I want to make my own choices, carve my own path." Dumbledore smiled, a rare moment of warmth. "You already are, Harry. You always were. The founders gave you the tools. Now, it is up to you to use them." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Harry met the members of the Order of the Phoenix, a motley crew of witches and wizards who had dedicated their lives to fighting the darkness. He recognized some of them, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, from the stories the founders had told him. Others were unfamiliar, but they all shared a common purpose. And then there were the lessons. Dumbledore became Harry's mentor, guiding him through the complexities of the wizarding world and the strategies of war. He taught Harry about the power of the mind, about the importance of occlumency, the art of protecting his thoughts from intruders. "Voldemort will try to get inside your head," Dumbledore said. "He will use your fears, your doubts, your secrets. You must be ready to resist him, to keep your mind clear and focused." Harry remembered what the founders had taught him about the ancient arts, about the rituals that could strengthen the mind and protect the soul. He had been trained by the best, had learned secrets that even Dumbledore didn't know. And he was ready to use them. But the most important lesson came from a place Harry least expected. He was walking through the corridors of Hogwarts, his mind churning with the weight of his responsibilities, when he encountered a portrait. It was a small painting, tucked away in a forgotten corner, and it showed a young woman with bright eyes and a knowing smile. "Harry Potter," the woman said. "I have been waiting for you." Harry stopped, his heart racing. He didn't recognize the woman, but there was something about her that felt familiar. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Rosalind," she said. "And I was a student here, many years ago. I knew the founders, Harry. I knew them when they were alive." Harry felt a jolt of surprise. "You knew them? How?" "I was their apprentice," Rosalind said. "The first apprentice they ever took. They taught me the ancient arts, the magic that has been lost to time. And when they died, I carried their secrets with me." Harry stared at the portrait, his mind racing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because there is something you need to know," Rosalind said. "Something that the founders did not tell you. Something about the past that will change everything." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. He had thought he knew everything about the founders, had believed that their secrets had been fully revealed. But now, he realized that there was more. There was always more. "Tell me," he said. "The Horcrux that Salazar created," Rosalind said. "The one he destroyed." "He didn't destroy it completely. He hid the remains, buried them deep beneath the castle. And he placed a ward around them, a ward that would prevent anyone from finding them." Harry felt his blood run cold. Why would he do that? Why would he hide something so dangerous? "Because he was afraid," Rosalind said. "Afraid of what would happen if the secrets of the Horcrux were discovered. He knew that the dark wizard who had taught him the ritual would return, and he wanted to protect the knowledge from falling into the wrong hands." Harry thought about this, about the implications. Salazar had hidden the remains of the Horcrux beneath Hogwarts, had placed a ward around them that had lasted for centuries. And now, Harry had to find them. He had to destroy the remains, to prevent Voldemort from using them to strengthen his hold on the world. "I need to find them," Harry said. "Where are they?" Rosalind's expression was grave. "They are in the Chamber of Secrets, Harry. The hidden chamber beneath the castle that Salazar built for his heir. You must go there, and you must be careful. The ward is powerful, and it will try to stop you." Harry nodded, his heart pounding. He had heard of the Chamber of Secrets, the legendary dungeon that Salazar had created to cleanse the school of Muggle-born students. It was a place of danger and mystery, and few had ever dared to enter. But Harry was not afraid. He had been trained by the founders themselves, and he knew the secrets of the ancient arts. He would find the chamber, destroy the remains of the Horcrux, and take one more step toward defeating the darkness. The search for the Chamber of Secrets was long and difficult. Harry spent weeks exploring the castle, using the knowledge of the founders to uncover hidden passages and secret doors. He consulted ancient texts, spoke to portraits, and used his magic to sense the presence of the ward that protected the chamber. And then, one night, he found it. It was in the girls' bathroom, of all places, a small, forgotten room that smelled of damp and decay. Harry stood at the sink, staring at the snake carved into the bronze tap, and he knew that this was the entrance. He spoke in Parseltongue, the language of snakes, and the sink began to move. It slid aside, revealing a dark tunnel that descended into the depths of the castle. Harry took a deep breath and stepped into the tunnel. The journey was treacherous. The tunnel was dark and narrow, its walls slick with moisture. Harry could hear the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance, and he could feel the presence of the ancient magic that permeated the chamber. It was old, powerful, and filled with secrets. He walked for what felt like hours, his wand held high to light the way. And then, at last, he reached the end of the tunnel. The Chamber of Secrets was massive, its walls covered in carvings of serpents and ancient runes. A statue of Salazar Slytherin dominated the far end of the room, its stone eyes gleaming with an eerie light. Harry approached the statue, his heart pounding. He could feel the presence of the Horcrux remains, buried somewhere beneath the stone floor. But there was something else too, something that made his skin crawl. A basilisk. A giant serpent that had been sleeping in the chamber for centuries, waiting for its master's call. Harry felt a surge of fear. He had heard about basilisks, about their deadly gaze and their venomous fangs. He knew that facing one would be the greatest challenge of his life. But he also knew that he had no choice. He had to destroy the remains of the Horcrux, and to do that, he had to confront the basilisk. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, using the soul magic Salazar had taught him. He could feel the basilisk, a presence like a cold and malevolent shadow. But beneath the darkness, there was something else, a spark of loyalty, of ancient connection to the Slytherin line. Harry spoke in Parseltongue, commanding the basilisk to show itself. The ground trembled, and a massive serpent rose from the darkness, its scales gleaming like emeralds and its eyes burning with a deadly fire. "I am Harry Potter," Harry said, his voice steady. "I am the heir of Salazar Slytherin, and I command you to obey me." The basilisk paused, its head cocked as if listening. It could feel the power in Harry's words, the connection to the founder it had been sworn to serve. "I have come to destroy the remains of the Horcrux," Harry said. "The darkness that Salazar created. You will not stop me. You will let me pass." The basilisk hissed, a sound that was both threatening and sorrowful. It had been bound to the chamber for centuries, forced to guard the secrets of its master. But Harry's words resonated with something deep within it, a sense of duty that transcended its dark nature. Slowly, the basilisk lowered its head. It had made its choice. Harry walked past the serpent, his heart pounding, and approached the pedestal where the remains of the Horcrux were hidden. He could feel the darkness radiating from them, a cold, malevolent energy that tried to push him away. But Harry was not afraid. He drew his wand and focused his magic, calling on the power of the Founders to destroy the remains once and for all. "Fiend fire," he shouted, and a wave of dark flames erupted from his wand. The fire consumed the remains, burning away the corruption that had infected them for centuries. The Horcrux screamed, a sound that was both human and inhuman, and then it was gone, reduced to ash and silence. Harry collapsed to his knees, his body shaking with exhaustion. The basilisk watched him, its eyes unreadable, and then it slithered back into the darkness from which it had come. He had done it. He had destroyed the remains of the Horcrux. The darkness that had threatened the world for centuries was finally gone. Harry made his way back through the tunnel, emerging into the castle with a sense of triumph. He had faced the darkest secrets of the Founders, had confronted a basilisk, and had destroyed the remains of a Horcrux. He was more powerful than ever. But as he walked through the corridors of Hogwarts, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The sense of triumph was tainted, overshadowed by the weight of what he had learned. The Founders had not been perfect. They had made mistakes, had harbored secrets, had allowed darkness to fester in the heart of their school. And now, Harry had to carry that burden with him, the knowledge that the past was not as simple as it seemed. But he also knew that the past was not the future. He had the power to change things, to break the cycle of darkness that had plagued the magical world for centuries. The Founders had given him the tools, and he was ready to use them. The battle was not over. It was only beginning. The weeks that followed were filled with more challenges. Harry continued to work with the Order of the Phoenix, learning the strategies of war and the secrets of the wizarding world. He faced Dementors, fought Death Eaters, and traveled across the country in search of allies and resources. But through it all, he never forgot the lessons of the Founders. He carried their wisdom in his heart, their magic in his soul, and their love in his memories. They had raised him, shaped him, and prepared him for the battles that lay ahead. And now, it was time to face the darkest battle of all. The final confrontation with Voldemort was approaching. Harry could feel it in the air, in the tension that gripped the wizarding world, in the fear that haunted the hearts of even the bravest witches and wizards. The darkness was closing in, and he knew that he would have to be ready. He stood at the window of his room at Grimmauld Place, staring out at the city of London. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the lives he was fighting to protect. "I will not let you win," he whispered, speaking to the darkness that lurked beyond the city limits. "I will not let you destroy everything I love. I have been trained by the Founders. I have been given their power, their wisdom, their love. And I will use every bit of it to defeat you." He touched the memory stone around his neck, feeling its warmth. The Founders were with him, always, and he would never be alone. The battle was coming. But Harry Potter was ready. Chapter 5, The Return of the Ancient Wizard. The years between Harry's return and the final confrontation had passed in a blur of battles, losses, and small victories. He had grown into a man, tall and lean, with the haunted eyes of someone who had seen too much and the steady hands of someone who had been trained to fight. The memory stone never left his neck, a constant weight against his chest that grounded him when the darkness threatened to overwhelm. Grimmauld Place had become his sanctuary, though the old house still creaked and groaned with the ghosts of its dark past. Harry had spent months cleansing it of the darker magics that had seeped into its walls, using the ancient warding techniques the Founders had taught him. Now, it was a fortress, a place where the Order could gather without fear of intrusion. Tonight, the house was quiet. The others had gone to their own homes, their own battles, and Harry was alone with his thoughts. He stood at the window of his room, staring out at the London skyline, and he could feel the weight of everything pressing down on him. The prophecy. The Horcruxes. The war. And the secret that death had revealed to him in the corridor of time. Harry had not told anyone about the full extent of what he had learned. Not Dumbledore, not Sirius, not even Hermione and Ron, who had become his closest friends and allies. The knowledge was too dangerous, too volatile. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything they were fighting for. But the weight of the secret was crushing him, and he knew that he couldn't carry it alone forever. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Harry turned to see Sirius Black standing in the doorway, his grey eyes filled with concern. "Harry," Sirius said, his voice gentle. "You've been up here for hours. The others are wondering if you're all right." Harry forced a smile, the mask he had learned to wear so well. "I'm fine, Sirius. Just thinking." Sirius stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He had aged in the years since Harry had first met him, lines of worry etched into his face, streaks of grey in his dark hair. But his eyes were still sharp, still filled with the fierce loyalty that had made him Harry's godfather. "You've been doing a lot of thinking lately," Sirius said. "More than usual. And you've been keeping secrets, Harry. I know you. Something's different. Something's changed." Harry looked away, unable to meet Sirius's gaze. "It's complicated." "It always is with you," Sirius said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "But I'm your godfather, Harry. You can tell me anything. I won't judge you. I won't betray your trust." Harry felt the words catch in his throat. He wanted to tell Sirius everything, about the Founders, about death, about the secret that had been haunting him for years. But the words wouldn't come. They were too big, too heavy, too impossible. "I need you to trust me," Harry said at last. "I can't tell you everything. Not yet. But I promise you, when the time is right, I will. Just, please trust me." Sirius studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "I trust you, Harry. I've always trusted you. But know this, whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone. That's what family is for." He reached out and squeezed Harry's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. Then he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Harry alone with his thoughts once more. Family. The word echoed in Harry's mind, a reminder of everything he had gained and everything he stood to lose. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Harry was in the kitchen of Grimmauld Place, eating breakfast with the other members of the Order, when a silver Patronus burst through the wall. It was a weasel, the sign of Arthur Weasley, and its voice was urgent and strained. "Harry, you need to come quickly. It's Dumbledore. He's been attacked. He's at St. Mungo's." The room erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped against the floor, voices rose in alarm, and Harry felt his heart stop in his chest. Dumbledore was the cornerstone of their resistance, the only wizard Voldemort truly feared. If he fell, everything would fall with him. Harry apparat to St. Mungo's without waiting for the others, his mind racing with fear and determination. He found Dumbledore in a private room, surrounded by healers and members of the Order. The old wizard was pale, his breathing shallow, but his eyes were open and alert. "Harry," Dumbledore said, his voice weak but steady. "You came." Harry rushed to his side, his heart pounding. "What happened? Who did this?" "Death Eaters," Dumbledore said. "They ambushed me in Hogsmeade. I managed to fight them off, but not before they got close." Harry felt a surge of rage. The Death Eaters were getting bolder, more desperate. They knew that Dumbledore was the key to their defeat, and they would stop at nothing to eliminate him. "We need to get you out of here," Harry said. "You're not safe. They'll come back." Dumbledore shook his head weakly. "No, Harry. I am exactly where I need to be. The healers are doing everything they can. But there is something I need to tell you. Something important." Harry leaned closer, his heart racing. "What is it?" Dumbledore reached out and grasped Harry's hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "The Horcruxes," he said. "I have been researching them, trying to find a way to destroy them. But I have not been successful. The magic is ancient, too powerful for modern wizards to break." Harry felt a surge of hope. "I can destroy them," he said. "I know how. The Founders taught me. They showed me the ancient rituals, the secrets of the old magic." Dumbledore's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "The Founders? You have spoken of them before, but I did not realize. You truly learned from them?" "Yes," Harry said. "They raised me, trained me, prepared me for this. I can destroy the Horcruxes. But I need to find them first. I need to know where they are." Dumbledore was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching Harry's face. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. I will tell you everything I know. The Horcruxes are scattered across the wizarding world, hidden in places that are meaningful to Voldemort. The locket, the cup, the diadem, the ring, the diary, and the snake." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. He recognized some of those items: the diary he had destroyed in his second year, the ring that had once belonged to Salazar. The others were unknown to him, but he knew that he would have to find them all. "Where are they?" he asked. Dumbledore closed his eyes, his face growing pale with exhaustion. "The locket is hidden in a cave along the coast. The cup is in Gringotts, in the Lestrange vault. The diadem is here, in Hogwarts, hidden somewhere in the Room of Requirement. The ring was destroyed by me, but there are others. The diary you have already found. And the snake is always with Voldemort." Harry absorbed the information, his mind already planning his next moves. He would have to gather the Horcruxes, one by one, and destroy them using the ancient magic of the Founders. It would be dangerous, nearly impossible. But he had no other choice. "Thank you," he said. "I will not let you down." Dumbledore smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "I know you won't, Harry. I have always believed in you." The search for the Horcruxes began immediately. Harry gathered a small team, Ron, Hermione, and a few trusted members of the Order, and set out to find the remaining pieces of Voldemort's soul. They traveled across the country, facing danger at every turn, and used the ancient magic of the Founders to overcome obstacles that would have stopped anyone else. The locket was the first to fall. Harry found it in the cave where Dumbledore had described. Guarded by inferi and dark enchantments. He used the old magic, the rituals of the Founders, to break the protective spells and destroy the Horcrux once and for all. The cup followed soon after. Breaking into Gringotts was one of the most dangerous things Harry had ever done, but he succeeded, aided by the cunning of Salazar and the courage of Godric. The cup was destroyed, its tainted magic dispersed into the air. And then there was the diadem. Harry returned to Hogwarts, his heart heavy with the weight of all he had lost and all he still had to do. The castle was under siege, Death Eaters swarming its corridors, students and teachers fighting for their lives. But Harry pushed through the chaos, his mind focused on his goal. He found the Room of Requirement, the hidden chamber that could become anything its seeker desired. It was filled with centuries of forgotten objects, a hoard of lost memories and abandoned dreams. And somewhere in the midst of it all was the diadem. Harry used the magic of the Founders to sense the presence of the Horcrux. It was like a cold spot in the air, a shadow in the light, and he followed it until he found the diadem hidden among a pile of old furniture. He reached out to touch it, and the magic surged through him. The diadem was powerful, filled with the dark energy of Voldemort's soul. But Harry had been trained by the Founders, and he knew how to destroy it. "Fiend fire," he whispered, and the flames erupted from his wand. The diadem screamed as the fire consumed it, the Horcrux within shattering into nothing. Harry watched it burn, his heart pounding with triumph and sorrow. He had done it. He had destroyed another piece of Voldemort's soul. But the battle was not over. It was only beginning. Harry emerged from the Room of Requirement to find that the castle had fallen. Death Eaters were everywhere, their dark robes swirling as they fought against the defenders of Hogwarts. The students and teachers were putting up a Fierce resistance, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Harry fought his way through the chaos, his magic blazing as he cut down enemies and protected allies. He used the techniques of the Founders, the runes, the wards, the ancient spells, and his power was overwhelming. Death Eaters fell before him like wheat before a scythe, their dark magic useless against the ancient arts he had mastered. And then he saw her. Hermione was cornered, surrounded by 3 Death Eaters, her wand raised but her face filled with fear. Harry rushed to her, his wand blazing, and he disarmed the attackers with a single, powerful spell. "Harry!" Hermione cried, her voice filled with relief. "You're all right." "Stay behind me," Harry said, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "I'll protect you." They fought together, side by side, their magic a whirlwind of light and fury. Ron found them, his face streaked with blood but his eyes blazing with determination. The 3 of them stood together, the Golden Trio, and they faced the darkness as one. But even their combined power was not enough. The final battle came on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Harry stood alone, facing Voldemort and his army of Death Eaters. The Dark Lord was triumphant, his red eyes gleaming with malice, his serpentine face twisted into a cruel smile. "You have fought bravely, Harry Potter," Voldemort said, his voice cold and mocking. "But you cannot defeat me. I have seen your future, and it ends here." Harry felt a surge of rage. He had been preparing for this moment his entire life, had been trained by the Founders, had destroyed Horcruxes, had sacrificed everything. And now, he would face the Dark Lord and end this once and for all. "I'm not afraid of you," Harry said, his voice steady. "I have faced worse than you. I have faced death itself. And I have survived." Voldemort laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Death? You have faced death. You are a fool, Harry Potter. Death is nothing compared to the power I wield." Harry raised his wand, and the magic of the Founders surged through him. He could feel their presence, their power, their love. They were with him, always, and they would never abandon him. "Expecto Patronum," he shouted, and a burst of silver light exploded from his wand. The Patronus took the shape of a stag, magnificent and blazing with power. It charged at Voldemort, driving him back, and Harry pressed the attack. He used every spell, every technique, every secret the Founders had taught him. He was unstoppable, a force of nature driven by love and justice and the will to protect those he cherished. But Voldemort was not defeated so easily. The Dark Lord fought back with a fury that was terrifying to behold. His magic was dark and twisted, corrupted by years of Horcrux creation and dark rituals. He lashed out with curses that would have killed anyone else, but Harry deflected them, his training making him quick and precise. And then, in a moment of desperation, Voldemort struck. A killing curse erupted from his wand, aimed directly at Harry's heart. There was no time to deflect it, no time to dodge. Harry felt the cold touch of death, felt the darkness closing in around him. But he was not afraid. He remembered the words of the Founders, the lesson of sacrifice, the understanding that sometimes, to save the ones you love, you must be willing to lose everything. And he accepted his fate. He closed his eyes, waiting for the end. But the end did not come. Instead, there was a flash of light, a burst of power that seemed to shake the very foundations of reality. Harry opened his eyes to find Voldemort staring at him in shock, his wand arm shaking, his face pale with disbelief. "Impossible," Voldemort hissed. "I killed you. I killed you years ago. How are you still alive?" Harry felt the magic of the Founders surging through him, stronger than ever. It was the power of their souls, the love they had woven into his very being. They had given him their strength, their wisdom, their courage. And now, they were giving him the final gift, the ability to survive the killing curse. "I am not just a wizard," Harry said, his voice ringing with power. "I am the child of the Founders. The heir of Hogwarts. And I will not let you destroy what they built." He raised his wand, and the magic of the Founders exploded from him in a wave of light and sound. The Death Eaters were thrown back, their dark magic shattered. The forest was illuminated, the shadows banished. And Voldemort stood alone, his face twisted with rage and terror. "This is the end," Harry said. "The end of your reign of terror. The end of your quest for immortality. The end of everything you have ever built." Voldemort screamed, a sound of pure rage and defiance. He raised his wand, preparing to strike again. But Harry was faster, stronger, more determined. "Avada Kedavra!" Voldemort shouted. "Expelliarmus!" Harry shouted at the same time. The spells collided, a blast of light that seemed to split the world in two. The two wizards fought for control, their magic locked in a deadly struggle. The ground shook, the sky darkened, and the forest echoed with the sound of their battle. And then, with a final, desperate surge, Harry pushed back. The killing curse rebounded, striking Voldemort in the chest. The Dark Lord screamed, his body convulsing as the magic consumed him. He fell to the ground, his wand clattering from his hand, and the darkness that had plagued the world for so long began to fade. Harry stood over Voldemort's body, his chest heaving, his heart pounding. He had done it. He had won. But victory came at a cost. He felt the magic of the Founders fading, their presence becoming distant, their voices growing quiet. They had given him everything they had, and now, they were gone. Harry collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He was alone. Truly alone, for the first time in his life. The Founders had been with him for so long. Their love and guidance a constant presence in his heart. And now, they were gone. But as Harry knelt in the forest, surrounded by the aftermath of battle, he felt something shift. A warmth spread through his chest, a presence that was both familiar and new. It was the Founders, he realized. They had not left him. They had simply become a part of him, their souls woven into his own, their magic flowing through his veins. He was not alone. He had never been alone. And with that realization, Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had fulfilled his destiny, had faced the darkness and won. The Founders had given him everything they had, and he had used it to defeat the greatest evil the wizarding world had ever known. He rose to his feet, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The Death Eaters were fleeing, their master defeated. The defenders of Hogwarts were cheering, their voices rising in triumph. And the war was finally over. Harry walked back to the castle, his steps slow and steady. He was exhausted, his body battered and bruised. But his heart was full, filled with the love of the Founders and the knowledge that he had done what he was born to do. The road ahead would be long, the challenges many. There were still Horcruxes to destroy, still remnants of the Dark Lord's power to erase. But Harry was ready. He had been trained by the best, and he would not rest until the world was safe. The days that followed were a blur of celebration and mourning. The wizarding world rejoiced at Voldemort's defeat, throwing parties and parades in honor of the boy who had vanquished the Dark Lord. Harry was hailed as a hero, his name spoken with reverence and awe. But Harry did not feel like a hero. He felt like a survivor, someone who had been given a second chance and had made the most of it. He had faced impossible odds, had sacrificed everything, and had emerged victorious. But he had also lost so much, the Founders, the life he had built in the past, the innocence of his youth. He retreated to Grimmauld Place, the old house that had become his refuge. He needed time to process everything, to mourn the losses and celebrate the victories. He needed to find a way to move forward. It was Hermione who found him, sitting alone in the library, staring at the flames of the fireplace. She sat down beside him, her hand finding his, and she waited in patient silence. "I've been thinking," Harry said at last. "About the Founders. About everything they taught me. I want to honor their legacy, to make sure that their knowledge is not lost to time." Hermione nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. "What do you want to do?" Harry thought about it, the words coming to him slowly. "I want to rebuild Hogwarts. Not just the castle, but the school itself. I want to bring back the ancient arts, the magic that has been forgotten. I want to create a place where students can learn the true power of magic, the power of connection, of understanding, of love." Hermione smiled, her heart swelling with pride. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Harry. And I know just the person to help you. She squeezed his hand, and Harry felt a surge of hope. He had lost so much, but he had also gained so much: friendship, love, purpose. And with the support of those who believed in him, he could accomplish anything. The rebuilding of Hogwarts began in the spring. Harry worked alongside Hermione, Ron, and the other members of the Order, using the ancient techniques of the Founders to restore the castle to its former glory. They repaired the damaged walls, cleansed the dark magic that had seeped into the stones, and created new wards that would protect the school for centuries to come. Harry also began to teach, sharing the knowledge of the Founders with a new generation of students. He taught them the ancient runes, the secrets of alchemy, the art of soul magic. He taught them to connect with the world around them, to understand the deep currents of power that flowed through all things. The students were eager to learn, their minds open and hungry for knowledge. They embraced the old ways, the wisdom of the Founders, and Harry felt a sense of pride and fulfillment that he had never experienced before. He was continuing the legacy of the Founders, carrying their teachings forward into a new era. And he knew that they would be proud of him. But there was one final task Harry had to complete. The memory stone still hung around his neck, the knowledge of the Founders embedded within it. He had used it many times, had drawn on its wisdom in moments of crisis. But now, it was time to pass it on. He called a meeting of the school's leaders, the teachers, the prefects, the heads of the houses, and he stood before them, the memory stone in his hand. "This is the legacy of the Founders," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "The knowledge they shared with me, the secrets of the ancient arts. It is too precious to be kept hidden, too important to be lost. I am passing it on to you, to the leaders of this school, so that you can share it with the students. So that the wisdom of the Founders will live on forever." He placed the stone on the table before him, and it glowed with a soft, silver light. The leaders gathered around it, their faces filled with wonder and awe. Harry stepped back, his heart swelling with emotion. He had done it. He had fulfilled his destiny, had honored the Founders, and had ensured that their legacy would endure. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving the memory stone behind. The burden of carrying the Founders' knowledge had been lifted from his shoulders, and he felt lighter, freer, than he had in years. He was ready for the next chapter of his life. Harry Potter stood on the grounds of Hogwarts, looking out at the castle he had come to love. The sun was setting, casting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and the air was filled with the scent of spring flowers. He had come so far from the cupboard under the stairs, from the lonely, frightened child who had dreamed of a world beyond his reach. He had faced darkness and danger, had known love and loss, had grown into the man he was meant to be. And he knew that the journey was not over. There would always be challenges, always be battles to fight. But Harry was ready. He had been trained by the Founders, armed with their wisdom and their love. And he would never give up. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Harry smiled. He could feel the Founders watching him, their presence a warm and comforting light in his heart. "Thank you," he whispered to the heavens. "Thank you for everything." And the stars seemed to twinkle in response, a silent promise that he would never be alone. The years passed, and Harry's influence spread. He became a legend in the wizarding world, not just for his defeat of Voldemort, but for his tireless work in rebuilding and transforming magical society. He founded new schools, created new institutions, and worked to bridge the gap between the magical and non-magical worlds. But he never forgot his roots, never forgot the Founders who had raised him. He visited their graves often, sitting in silence and speaking to their spirits. He told them about his successes, his failures, his hopes and dreams. And he felt their presence always, a constant reminder of the love that had shaped him. One evening, many years later, Harry stood on the grounds of Hogwarts, watching the students play in the fading light. He was old now, his hair gray and his face lined with age. But his eyes were still bright, his heart still full. He had come full circle, from a frightened child to a wise old man. He had faced the darkness and won, had built a legacy that would endure for generations. And he had done it all with the love of the Founders in his heart. As the sun set over the castle, Harry smiled. He was ready for whatever came next, ready to face the future. With courage and hope. The journey was over. But the story would live on, forever and always. Chapter 6, The Founder Reborn. The morning of Harry's 70th birthday dawned clear and golden, the kind of morning that seemed to promise new beginnings. He stood at the window of his chambers in Hogwarts, looking out at the castle grounds that had been his home for more than half a century. The lake sparkled in the distance, the forbidden forest stretched dark and mysterious, and the towers of the castle rose toward a sky painted in shades of rose and amber. He was old now. His hair had gone completely white, and his face was etched with the lines of a life fully lived. But his eyes were still the vivid green of his mother's, sharp and observant, missing nothing. The scar on his forehead had faded to a pale silver line, barely visible in the morning light. He had carried it for so long that he sometimes forgot it was there. But today, the scar was throbbing. Harry raised a hand to his forehead, pressing his fingers against the familiar ridge. It had been decades since he had felt this sensation, the pulling, the burning, the sense of something dark and ancient stirring in the depths of his consciousness. He had thought the connection was gone, severed when Voldemort fell. But now, he realized, it had only been dormant. Waiting. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, using the ancient techniques of soul magic that the Founders had taught him. He could feel something out there, a presence, dark and malevolent, pulsing with a power that had been gathering for years. It was not Voldemort, that threat had been ended once and for all. But it was something else, something that had been born from the chaos of the war. Harry opened his eyes and sighed. It seemed that his work was not yet done. The day was filled with celebrations. Students and teachers alike had gathered in the great hall to honor the man who had saved the wizarding world, the man who had rebuilt Hogwarts and restored the ancient magic of the Founders. There were speeches and songs, gifts and toasts, and the hall was decorated with banners that depicted Harry's many achievements. Harry smiled and waved, accepting the accolades with grace. He had never been comfortable with the spotlight, but he had learned to endure it for the sake of those who wished to honor him. He knew that his life had touched many people, that his work had changed the world for the better. And that was worth all the attention in the world. But throughout the celebration, he kept feeling the pull of the scar, the dark presence that was lurking just beyond his awareness. He pushed it aside, focusing on the joy of the moment, but he knew that he would have to deal with it soon. As the festivities wound down, Harry slipped away from the crowd and made his way to the headmaster's office. The portraits of the past headmasters watched him as he entered, their painted eyes filled with curiosity. "Harry," Dumbledore's portrait said, his blue eyes twinkling. "I had a feeling you would come." Harry nodded, taking a seat in the chair behind the desk. "The scar is throbbing, Albus. I thought the connection was gone, but it's back. There's something out there, something dark. I can feel it." Dumbledore's expression grew serious. "I have sensed it too. There is a disturbance in the magical currents, a darkness that has been growing for months. I believe it is connected to the remnants of Voldemort's power, the echoes of his magic that still linger in the world." Harry frowned. "But we destroyed all the Horcruxes. We ended the dark magic that bound him to life." "Indeed," Dumbledore said. "But the Dark Lord's influence extended far beyond the Horcruxes. He corrupted the very fabric of magic itself, tainting it with his hatred and ambition. That taint has not been fully cleansed, and it is beginning to coalesce into something new." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "Something new? What do you mean?" Dumbledore's portrait was silent for a long moment. "I mean that the darkness is rising again, Harry. Not in the form of a single Dark Lord, but in the form of a movement, a cult of followers who seek to recreate the horrors of the past. They are led by a wizard who calls himself the heir of Slytherin, a man who claims to be the rightful descendant of Salazar." Harry felt his blood run cold. Salazar didn't have children. He dedicated his life to Hogwarts, to the Founder's mission. He wouldn't have passed on his legacy to someone like that. "The man who leads this cult claims otherwise," Dumbledore said. "He has gathered followers from across the wizarding world, many of them from the old pureblood families. They believe that the Founder's vision has been corrupted, that the school has become weak and misguided. They seek to restore what they believe is the true purpose of Hogwarts, to train pure-blood wizards in the ancient arts. Harry stood up, his heart pounding. I have to stop them. The Founder's legacy is not about blood purity. It's about magic, about connection, about love. I won't let anyone pervert that legacy. Dumbledore nodded. I knew you would say that, Harry. That is why I have prepared something for you. The next day, Harry traveled to the Department of Mysteries. He had not been back to the Ministry since the war, but the building was as familiar as ever, the same gleaming halls, the same bustling workers, the same sense of bureaucratic chaos. He made his way to the lower levels, past the rows of wizards and witches who stared at him with awe and admiration, until he reached the door that led to the Department of Mysteries. The Unspeakables were waiting for him, a group of hooded figures who had dedicated their lives to studying the deepest secrets of magic. They led him into a vast chamber filled with jars of swirling mist, floating orbs, and artifacts that seemed to pulse with their own power. We have been expecting you. Mr. Potter, the lead Unspeakable said, his voice muffled by his hood. The headmaster told us of your visit. I'm here to stop a cult, Harry said. They call themselves the heir of Slytherin's followers, and they're trying to pervert the Founder's legacy. I need to know everything you have on them. The Unspeakable nodded and led him to a table covered in scrolls and documents. The cult has been active for several years, but they have only recently begun to make their presence known. They are led by a wizard who calls himself Marcus Slytherin, though we believe his true name is Marcus Gray. He is a descendant of Salazar's brother, a branch of the family that was disowned centuries ago. Harry scanned the documents, his eyes growing wide. Marcus Gray had been a student at Hogwarts, a promising wizard who had excelled in the ancient arts. But he had also been a fanatic, a believer in blood purity who had been expelled for attempting to revive the Chamber of Secrets. He believes he is the true heir to Salazar's legacy, Harry said. He believes that the Founder's vision was to create a pure-blooded aristocracy, to dominate the Muggle world and establish magical supremacy. That's not what they wanted at all. It is not, the Unspeakable agreed. But Marcus has twisted their legacy to suit his own purposes. And he has gathered a considerable following among the old families, those who have never fully accepted the changes you have brought to the wizarding world. Harry felt a surge of anger. He had worked so hard to build a better world, to create a society where all wizards and witches could thrive regardless of their blood status. And now, it was all being threatened by a man who had perverted the teachings of the Founders. I need to find Marcus Gray, Harry said. I need to stop him before his movement gains more power. The Unspeakable nodded. We have located his base of operations, a hidden fortress in the Scottish Highlands, protected by ancient wards. But we have been unable to breach those wards. They are powerful, far more powerful than anything we have encountered. Harry smiled, a grim expression that did not reach his eyes. I know how to break those wards. The Founders taught me. The journey to the Scottish Highlands was long and treacherous. Harry traveled alone, his wand in hand and the memory of the Founders burning in his heart. He had spent so many years teaching others, guiding the next generation, that he had almost forgotten what it was like to be a warrior. But the old skills came back to him quickly, his body responding to the years of training with a familiarity that felt like coming home. The fortress was hidden in a valley, surrounded by mountains and protected by ancient wards that pulsed with a dark, malevolent energy. Harry could feel them as he approached, a presence like a cold hand pressing against his mind. He raised his wand and began to chant, the words of the ancient incantation flowing from his lips like water. He could feel the Founder's power rising within him, their magic surging through his veins as he worked to unravel the wards that protected the fortress. The process was slow and painstaking, each layer of protection requiring its own counterspell. Harry worked for hours, his body growing tired and his mind growing weary. But he did not stop. He could not stop. The fate of the wizarding world depended on him. Finally, with a sound like shattering glass, the wards collapsed. The fortress lay before him, its dark walls rising against the twilight sky. Harry stepped forward, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The interior of the fortress was cold and dark, lit only by the eerie glow of torches that burned with a green flame. Harry walked through the corridors, his wand held high, and he could feel the presence of the cultists moving in the shadows. They were waiting for him, their dark magic gathered like a storm. He reached the central chamber, a vast hall filled with cultists who had gathered for a ritual. At the center of the hall stood a figure in dark robes, his face hidden by a hood. Marcus Gray. Harry Potter, Marcus said, his voice ringing with contempt. The great hero arrives at last. Harry stepped into the hall, his eyes scanning the room. The cultists were armed, their wands raised and their faces twisted with hatred. But Harry was not afraid. He had faced worse than this, far worse. Your reign ends now, Marcus, Harry said. The Founder's legacy is not yours to pervert. They built Hogwarts to be a place of learning and magic, not a tool for domination. Marcus laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. You know nothing of the Founders, Potter. You claim to have learned from them, but you have twisted their teachings just as you have twisted everything else. Salazar Slytherin understood the importance of blood purity, the necessity of preserving the magical lineage. He created the Chamber of Secrets to cleanse the school of those who would dilute our power. Harry shook his head. Salazar Slytherin was a complicated man. He made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But he also changed. He grew. He came to understand that magic was not about blood, but about love and connection. The Founders all learned that lesson, and they raised me to carry their legacy forward. Marcus sneered. You are a fool, Potter. The Founders may have been weak in their old age, but I will restore their true legacy. I will build a world where the pureblood families rule supreme, where the Muggleborn are cast out and the ancient arts are restored. Harry raised his wand, the magic of the Founders blazing within him. I won't let that happen. The Founders gave me their power, their wisdom, their love. And I will use it to protect the world they built. The cultists attacked, their curses raining down on Harry like a storm. But Harry was ready. He deflected their spells, his movements fast and precise, and he countered. With spells of his own. The ancient magic of the Founders flowed through him, and he was unstoppable. One by one, the cultists fell. They were powerful, trained in the dark arts, but they were no match for Harry. He had been trained by the best, and he had centuries of knowledge at his fingertips. Within minutes, the hall was empty of cultists, save for Marcus Gray. Impressive, Marcus said, his voice cold. But you cannot defeat me, Potter. I have the power of Salazar Slytherin flowing through my veins. I am his true heir. Harry felt a surge of anger. You are nothing like Salazar. He was a flawed man, but he was also a great one. He dedicated his life to building something beautiful, something that would endure for centuries. You are just a petty tyrant, a man who has twisted his legacy for your own selfish purposes. Marcus raised his wand, his face twisted with rage. Then let us see who is the true heir of Slytherin. The battle was fierce and brutal. The two wizards fought for control of the chamber, their magic colliding with explosive force. Harry used the techniques of the Founders, the runes, the wards, the ancient spells, and he fought with a fury that surprised even himself. He was not just fighting for his own life. He was fighting for the legacy of the Founders, for everything they had built and everything they had taught him. But Marcus was powerful, far more powerful than Harry had anticipated. He had been studying the ancient texts for years, mastering the dark arts that the Founders had warned against. His magic was twisted and corrupt, but it was also formidable. Harry felt himself being pushed back, his defenses weakening. Marcus was gaining ground, his spells growing more powerful, more desperate. And then, in a moment of distraction, Harry stumbled. Marcus saw his opportunity. He raised his wand, a killing curse forming on his lips. But before he could speak the words, Harry's hand went to his chest. To the memory stone. The stone was warm against his palm, pulsing with the power of the Founders. Harry could feel them there, Godric, Rowena, Helga, Salazar, their souls woven into the fabric of the stone, waiting for this moment. Founders, Harry whispered, his voice filled with desperation. I need your help. I need your power. Please. And the stone responded. A burst of light exploded from the stone, filling the chamber with a brilliance that was almost blinding. Harry felt the power of the Founders flowing into him, their magic surging through his veins like a river of fire. He was no longer just Harry Potter. He was the child of the Founders, the heir of Hogwarts, the embodiment of everything they had built. Marcus screamed, shielding his eyes from the light. But Harry didn't hesitate. He raised his wand, the power of the Founders blazing through him, and he spoke the words that would end this battle once and for all. Protego tot alum, he shouted, and a wave of protective magic swept through the chamber. The spell was ancient, older than anything Marcus had ever encountered. It was a ward of containment, designed to trap and neutralize dark magic. The force of it struck Marcus, and he went down, his wand clattering from his hand. The cultists who had survived the battle were also trapped, their dark magic neutralized. They fell to their knees, their faces pale with fear. Harry stood over Marcus, his chest heaving, his heart pounding. He had done it. He had stopped the cult, prevented the world from falling into darkness once again. The Founders' legacy is safe, he said, his voice filled with quiet triumph. You cannot pervert it, Marcus. You cannot destroy what they built. Their magic is eternal, and it will always protect those who are worthy. Marcus looked up at Harry, his eyes filled with hatred and defeat. You may have won this battle, Potter. But there will be others. The world will never accept your vision of equality. The pure-blood families will always rise again. Harry shook his head. Maybe. But as long as I draw breath, I will fight them. I will protect the legacy of the Founders. And I will ensure that Hogwarts remains a place of learning and magic for everyone. He turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the cultists behind. The magic of the Founders faded, the light dimming to a gentle glow. Harry felt their presence receding, their power returning to the stone. But he knew that they would always be with him. They were a part of him now, woven into his very soul. And as long as he lived, their legacy would endure. The aftermath of the battle was chaotic but ultimately victorious. The cultists were rounded up and brought to justice, their dark magic neutralized by the Ministry's orders. Marcus Grey was sentenced to life in Azkaban, his reign of terror ended once and for all. Harry returned to Hogwarts, his body weary but his heart full. He had done what he had been called to do, had protected the legacy of the Founders and ensured that the future of the wizarding world was safe. But he knew that the battle was never truly over. There would always be challenges, always be threats. The darkness might rise again, in a different form, with a different face. But Harry was ready. He had been trained by the best, and he would never give up. The years continued to pass, and Harry's influence grew. He became the headmaster of Hogwarts, the first in generations to truly understand the ancient magic that had shaped the school. He continued to teach, to guide, to inspire. He shared the knowledge of the Founders with a new generation of students, ensuring that their legacy would endure for centuries to come. And through it all, he never forgot the lessons he had learned. He never forgot the courage of Godric, the wisdom of Rowena, the compassion of Helga, the cunning of Salazar. He carried them with him always, their presence a constant comfort and guide. One evening, many years later, Harry stood on the grounds of Hogwarts, watching the sun set over the castle. He was old now, his body frail and his hair white. But his eyes were still bright, his heart still full. He could feel the Founders watching him, their presence a warm and loving light in his soul. They had been with him through everything, the battles, the losses, the triumphs. And now, they were guiding him toward his final journey. It's almost time, Harry whispered, his voice filled with peace. I can feel it. The end is near. But there was no fear in his words. Only acceptance, only gratitude. He had lived a full life, a life that had been filled with love and purpose. He had honored the Founders, protected their legacy, and built a better world for future generations. And now, it was time to let go. Harry sat in his chambers, the memory stone resting on the table before him. He had carried it for so long, had drawn on its power in moments of need. But now, it was time to pass it on. He had chosen a successor, a young witch named Alara, who had shown remarkable talent in the ancient arts. She was bright, kind, and possessed a deep understanding of the founders' teachings. She would carry the legacy forward, would ensure that the wisdom of the past was not lost. Elara entered the chamber, her eyes wide with reverence. She knelt before Harry, her hands folded in her lap. "Headmaster," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You summoned me." Harry smiled, his gaze gentle. "I have chosen you, Elara, to carry the legacy of the founders forward. The memory stone contains their knowledge, their wisdom, their power. It has been my constant companion for decades. And now, I give it to you." He picked up the stone and placed it in her hands. Elara gasped as the magic surged through her, the power of the founders flowing into her soul. She could feel them there, Godric, Rowena, Helga, Salazar, their presence warm and comforting. "I will honor them," Elara said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I will carry their legacy forward. I will protect Hogwarts and the wizarding world." Harry nodded, his heart full. "I know you will, Elara. You are a good witch, a worthy successor. The founders have chosen wisely." He rose from his chair, his body aching but his spirit strong. He walked to the window, looking out at the castle that had been his home for so many years. The stars were beginning to appear in the sky, and he could feel the presence of something vast and ancient waiting for him. "It's time," he said. "I can feel death calling me." Elara rose, her eyes filled with tears. "Headmaster, I." Harry smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do not grieve, Elara. This is not the end. Death is simply the beginning of a new journey. The founders taught me that. And I am ready to see them again." He turned and walked out of the chamber, his steps slow and steady. The castle corridors were quiet, the students asleep in their beds. Harry made his way to the great hall, the place where his journey had begun so many years ago. He stood in the center of the hall, the memories washing over him. He could see the founders in his mind's eye, Godric with his broad smile, Rowena with her piercing gaze, Helga with her gentle warmth, Salazar with his guarded strength. They had given him everything, had shaped him into the man he had become. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for everything." The room began to glow, a soft, silver light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The founders' portraits on the walls began to stir, their painted eyes opening, their painted faces smiling. "It is time, child," Rowena's voice echoed. "We have been waiting for you." Harry felt a surge of joy, of peace. He was going home. Back to the founders, back to the family that had raised him, back to the beginning of everything. He closed his eyes, and the light enveloped him. He felt himself being lifted, carried up into the warmth and the brightness. And he felt the presence of the founders. All around him, their arms open, their hearts full. "Welcome home," Helga said, her voice like a gentle embrace. "Welcome home, Harry." In the morning, the news spread through Hogwarts like wildfire. Headmaster Harry Potter had passed away in the night, peaceful and serene. The students and teachers mourned his loss, their grief mingling with gratitude for all he had given them. But there was also a sense of wonder, of awe. Harry had lived a life unlike any other, had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. He had carried the legacy of the founders forward, had built a better world for future generations. And he had done it all with love and courage and hope. The memory stone was passed to Elara, and she carried it with pride. She would continue Harry's work, would ensure that the wisdom of the founders was never lost. The legacy of Hogwarts would endure, and Harry's spirit would live on in the hearts of all who had known him. The years passed, and the legend of Harry Potter grew. He became a figure of myth and history, a symbol of courage and hope. Songs were sung about him, books were written about his exploits, and statues were erected in his honor. But the true legacy of Harry Potter was not in the monuments or the stories. It was in the lives he had touched, the world he had changed, the magic he had preserved. He had been given a second chance, a gift from death itself, and he had used it to build something beautiful. He had honored the founders, protected their legacy, and created a world where love and magic could flourish. And in the end, that was all that mattered. In the realm beyond, Harry walked through fields of golden light, the Founders at his side. The years of struggle and pain were behind him, replaced by a peace that was deeper than anything he had ever known. He was home, truly home, in the place where he had always belonged. "You did well, little one," Godric said, his voice rumbling with pride. "Better than we could have ever imagined." Harry smiled, his heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you. You gave me everything, shaped me, guided me. I am who I am because of you." "You always had the potential," Rowena said, her voice wise and warm. "We simply helped you realize it." "And we love you," Helga added, her eyes shining with tears. "We love you so much, Harry." Salazar stepped forward, his dark eyes filled with emotion. "You have carried our legacy, Harry. You have honored us in ways we never could have imagined. And for that, we are forever grateful." Harry felt tears streaming down his face, tears of joy and gratitude. He was surrounded by the people he loved, the people who had given him everything. And he knew that he would never be alone again. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for everything." The Founders gathered around him, their arms wrapped around him in a warm embrace. And Harry felt a peace that he had never known, a sense of completion that filled his very soul. He was home. And so the story ends, as all stories must. But the legacy of Harry Potter lives on, in the halls of Hogwarts, in the hearts of those who knew him, and in the world he helped to build. He was the child of the Founders, the heir of Hogwarts, the wizard who faced the darkness and won. And though he is gone, his spirit remains, a guiding light for future generations, a symbol of hope and courage and love. The Founders' legacy is safe, carried forward by those who believe in the power of magic and connection. And Harry's journey, from the cupboard under the stairs to the fields of golden light, is a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. For in the end, that is what matters most. Not the battles we win, or the power we wield, but the love we share and the legacy we leave behind. Harry Potter understood that. And his legacy will endure forever. The end.